Okay. We want if Don DeZellum is able to join us, if you'd have any problem with him coming in late.
Absolutely.
Great. We will do that for Don then. Well, good evening, and thank you for coming. I'd like to first provide some rules of engagement before we get into questions and answers. Candidate seating on the platform, for you, if you're kind of wondering how we came up with that since it's not alphabetical, was determined by a candidate's draw prior to the commencement of this forum. Introductions and the closing remarks will be given in this order. The event tonight will be conducted as a forum. For those of us who suffered through both the 2016 and the 2019/20 political debates at the national level, we know that this many folks on the podium is hard for each of you to answer the same question one after the other. So we'll have a way to allow each of you to provide introductions. I also have a follow-up for each of you to ask you about what you hope to accomplish in the office that you're running for. Then I have a couple of questions that have been written for each of you, and we'll talk about that as well. And then you'll be allowed to answer questions from the audience. We will vet those at the table. As Deb said, those questions will not be asked if we feel that they are derogatory or a personal attack on anyone here. We hope that there'll be questions that will help all of us understand you as people and you as candidates. So, as I said, it's not a debate. It's a deliberate before the actual election. Each candidate's going to have a 2-minute opening statement, an opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. All other responses will be limited to one. I'm pretty liberal in that way. If I think it's going to help the overall discussion, I will allow you a 30-second rebuttal or response if necessary. We have a I have and again, those responses will be limited to 1 minute. And 60 seconds sounds like a very short amount of time, but having been where most of you are sitting now, 60 seconds can also be a lifetime. So don't worry about getting your point across in 60 seconds. Following this segment, and then finally, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. So I ask that the candidates be respectful of the timekeeper and the other candidates. And now I'd like to introduce our candidates from my left to right. As we mentioned, Don DeZellem will not be here initially. We hope that he'll join us later. Councilwoman Kelly Case, Robert Zuluaga, Michael Dalton, Noel Sawyer, Councilman Noel Sawyer, and Councilman Nacarado. And finally, Mr. Rusty Neal. And Rusty, I hope you don't mind I call you Rusty instead of by your christening name, if that's okay with you. Thank you so much. So we'll begin.
Carol, appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I don't have anything prepared. I'm more comfortable just speaking to you from my heart. I've served for 2 years now as a city council person and have enjoyed it. It's been challenging at times, and we've had to, as a council, make some difficult decisions that, to be perfectly honest, there were some I wish I didn't have to make. But in this role, whether it's mayor or council, we all have equal vote sitting on the dais. The mayor is really a leader or a figurehead, represents the city in many ways, but we're all equal on the board, and we have no power individually, only as a group. And so with that, I hope as if I'm elected as your mayor, to understand that and really work to lead and build consensus amongst the council members that are elected and that will continue here, to try and do the will of the people as far as we can, understanding that we are governed by a charter, we're governed by a constitution, both state and federally, and we have a multitude of ordinances and laws that really govern a lot of the decision making that we make. So with all of that taken into consideration, my goal is to be a good leader and to build that consensus among all of us that really have the city's best interests at heart. And so all I can say is I ask for your support and look forward to serving in one capacity or another. Thank you for coming again.
Good evening. I'm starting with prepared notes, and as I get more confident and we get to know each other a little more, I'll break free of those. Let me tell you a little about who I am. My name is Robert Zuluaga. I moved back to Colorado after spending 24 years in Phoenix, Arizona. I have a passion for our exceptional American form of government, which is unparalleled world over. Unlike other governments that power flows from the laws of nature and nature's God, then through a king or a dictator or a tyrant, who then rule according to their personal preferences or their philosophies, the government of the United States of America derives its just powers from you and I. That is, we the people. John F. Kennedy inspired a generation back in the 60s. Some of you may remember that era, with his famous inaugural speech, challenging us to ask not what our country can do for us, but what we can do for our country. Since we are the king, we each have a responsibility to labor to make our city, our county, and our state and our nation better than how we found it. I'm called in this season of my life to contribute the skills, principles, and my effort to make a positive vision, to create a positive vision for our city, to let my vote be, to eliminate debt, and serve the needs I see to preserve our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and our pursuit of freedom. And to pass that on to our children. To me, this means limited government, which creates an unbiased platform upon which the citizens and the business community can thrive. So I look forward to the questions that are coming.
Thank you, Robert. Darwin.
Yeah, and DAR works just well. DAR Nacarado. A little bit about my background. I spent about 30 years in business in the corporate world, starting out with small startups and then graduating to large New York Stock Exchange multi-billion-dollar company, and then back to another startup. All of that time was spent at what we call in the business world C-level, which means chief something or other. Started as a chief accountant, chief financial officer, chief operating officer, chief executive officer. In other words, an awful lot of leadership involved in all that. I guess what I want to say to you is that when we talk about leadership from this dais, we're not talking about leading you. You're the bosses, you lead us. As a candidate for mayor, the mayor and anyone who serves on council leads the government. We lead here at City Hall. And in times of emergency, certainly we lead on a broader basis. But in the meantime, you're the bosses. And I ask you to do that. I would represent you. This is a representative form of government. I will represent, and since my colleague here mentioned JFK, I'll just throw in something from RFK. He famously said, some people see things as they are and ask, why? I dream things that never were and ask, why not? I'll ask for your vote for mayor. Thank you.
Jim.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Deb and Carol and the Woodland Park Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. My name is Jim Paff, and running for City Council. My background, I've done for many years political and business consulting, including doing some business in and out of India for a few years and other places as well. I moved to Colorado in 2005 to work for Focus on the Family. I came to help develop the Family Policy Council network around the country, and then was immediately moved to heading up the effort for the marriage amendment here in Colorado, which we were successful at passing a marriage amendment and defeating a domestic partnerships referendum. Shortly after that, I founded the Colorado Family Institute to help promote pro-life, pro-family policy in Denver. That organization still exists. I also founded the Americans for Prosperity chapter here in Colorado. I was on the radio for 4 years in Denver on KLZ. And right towards the end of that run, a friend of mine named Tim Hulskamp won a seat in Congress in Kansas and asked me to be his chief of staff. And I did that for 4 years while flying back and forth to my home in Colorado Springs. Currently, after that, I came back and lived in Castle Rock. I was a Douglas County GOP chairman, and then went back to Congress to serve Congressman Thomas Massey. I now am chief of staff for the Colorado House Republicans. Just right now, as we're speaking, we're fighting frankly, a state-run healthcare up in Colorado. I'm concerned about that, but I'm concerned about in city council, in the city where my wife and I own a business, Fit Nutrition Depot. We want to reduce debt here in the city council. We want to get the city focused on city needs and
And Jim,
want to work very hard.
Jim,
And I
you're-
operate by the principle of limited government.
Jim,
for your
thank you
time.
so
Thank you for your
much.
consideration.
We are going to come back around and ask what you'd like to accomplish as a council member, but thank you. Michael.
So just introductions, right? My name is Michael Dalton. You'll see me on the ballot as Michael, the Underground Dalton. I work in social media a lot, so I've got a couple of social media pages. I've been invested in this community for over 10 years, and I've sat right there in those same seats and listened to a lot of decisions being made. A few years back, I was challenged to step up and help by the man who sat in this seat, and took a couple of years, but I'm sitting here running for council to give more of my time. My background is in storytelling. I've had the opportunity to make a living behind the camera for 25 years. I've traveled the world. I've worked with nonprofits, 501 churches. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, authors, leaders. I've been the guy behind the curtain a lot of times, the wizard behind the curtain, to make sure the story is told favorable to the people out in the audience. And I think Woodland Park needs a new story. The story that's been told about Woodland Park for years from this council seat is that it's a poor place to do business, but a great place to live. I think we need to change that story. I think there are things we can do with inside the city right now to begin to change that story for the next 20 years. I'm more about looking forward than looking backwards. We have a lot of debt. We have a lot of issues that have come from the past. But if we strategically make decisions now, we can begin to reduce that stuff and move forward. And Woodland Park is growing whether we like it or not. Colorado is growing whether we like it or not. And this year, we're going to make a decision in the comprehensive plan on what Woodland Park will look like in 20 years. And I think I'm pretty good to sit back and just have a visionary look at that. So thanks again. Again, Michael, the Underground Dalton, on the ballot.
Thanks, Michael. No?
Hello, Woodland Park. My name is Noel Sawyer, and I want to be your next mayor. I'm not a person that's going to give you empty promises. I'm going to be a mayor that works with the community and the city to move it into the future with realistic ideas and grand opportunities. I'll be a mayor that can handle criticism without reacting and learn from it. As a mayor, I'll be nonpartisan, transparent, and financially responsible with your money. I will never ask to raise taxes. I will continue to make sure that the budget is accurate and the money is spent where it should be and not spent on frivolous agendas. I've been on council for 6 years. The councils that I have been seated with have accomplished great things that have moved our community forward. My experience can be a blessing or a curse because you have a track record to review. With no track record, there's nothing to criticize. I'm proud of my accomplishments that have helped the community be fiscally responsible and grow the community. I will be a mayor that can handle the stress of the job and welcome new challenges that enhance our community. The city does have its challenges, but what city doesn't? I have the youth, demeanor, energy, and ability to lead Woodland Park into the new decade. My name is Noel Sawyer, and I'm asking for your vote for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, no. Val?
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks to the chamber for arranging the event, all the people who come to watch this, and my fellow participants. I'm Val Carr. I serve currently as the Mayor Pro Tem of Woodland Park City Council, but I've had 20 to 30 years of leadership experience all the way down the line from my own businesses when I retired at age 45 as a CEO and other leadership in various boards and volunteer things that I do for many years. And I think this is an excellent place to continue my service. I currently have no businesses or real estate development interests, but I also serve on many volunteer entities and boards. I've lived in Woodland Park since 2004 with my wonderful wife, Sherry, who is an accomplished tag teacher, and we have 7 children for those of you who don't know me. As your mayor, I will continue to be the most prepared leader of the council, which is the mayor's job. Return control of citizens' issues to the city council's agenda, organize and run city council meetings by the city council's charter, in the practice of rubber stamping demands through stronger council leadership. Lead the council to principled decisions, not priorities of camaraderie. We have a charter that specifies what the city council is in charge of, and they direct through vision of the city administration. I will retain green and open spaces and view corridors, encourage low density, high quality housing, maintain historic Western nature, and strive for initiatives that support seniors. I'm the only candidate who will be a full-time mayor. I'm seeking your vote for mayor of Woodland Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Val. Rusty.
Good evening. My real name is Paul B. Neal III. Being that I'm a third, there was always two Paul Neals minimum in the house. So on the day I was born, I was given a nickname. It's Rusty. It's a legal alias that has been filed with the government. So if you see me around town, please call me Rusty. I do go by that. I am running for city council, and tonight is fairly special. This forum is only my second time to appear before a large group of neighbors where I've had to answer your questions and defend my own thoughts. I have spoken to very large audiences in my professional career, but never or only one other time, and that was the high school forum, where you could ask questions and I had to defend on an equal basis, not a boss subordinate type of situation. So it's very different from me. I hope that the way I look at problems and go through the analytics and searching out information that leads to a position leaves a favorable impression. And I'm hoping for your support in that way. I'm married to Dawn Chappelle Neal. She's a pediatric nurse practitioner. She works in Colorado Springs part-time, where she specializes in pediatric mental health. I am retired 2 times. My first career was with the military. I was an Army officer, airborne ranger, commanded 3 times. But then I transitioned into my second career, which was in information technology, because I had picked up a couple degrees in that field, and I've been in position of a C-level and lived all over the world in 15 different countries. So I've seen a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Rusty, thank you very much. I'm going to go in the same order for the next question. It's for you to each address the position or the office that you're running for. And that question is, what do you hope to accomplish in that office? And you have 1 minute for this response. And Kelly, I'll start with you.
Thank you again. Well, let's see. Where do I start? I hope to accomplish carrying on let's see, how do I say it? I believe that this council has done some good work in addressing some fiscal management issues that we inherited. Well, thank you. And I would like to see that work continued in building our fund balance and, of course, the ever-present debt reduction, which is near and dear to my heart. Been down that road as the finance director and hope to help make that happen. Thank you.
Bob, same question for council.
Thank you. That button. I see 3 things that are key to my heart for the city. First is a positive vision. We are setting forth a 10-year comprehensive plan, and there's a lot we can accomplish through collaboration and through transparency. I really have a passion for small business. I've been a small business owner all my life, and so I really like to see us commit to our small businesses succeeding. And so my commitment is really to work together to see us be way better than we are now, and to see a future for our children that's not just for ourselves. There's some work that needs to be done, long-range planning, and in the past that has fallen off. I like to see us pass the baton one to the other.
Thank you. Dar.
I should say before I start, I have a chronic cough. It has nothing to do. It will hurt me more than it will you. So not to worry. What do I hope to accomplish as mayor of Woodland Park? You know, I think we want to maintain our small town environment, our mountain town environment. And we're all neighbors. We all know each other. So I'd like to make sure that with my collaborative consensus building leadership style, that we can keep the chaos to a minimum. Yes, we will disagree. Even among family members, we disagree from time to time. But that doesn't mean we dislike each other. We should still be friends at the end of every day. So my primary thing is to bring that consensus building collaborative style to the council and to our city government.
Thanks, Dar. Jim?
Well, so for city council, as I look forward to, or look back to where we've been and look forward to where we would go, I think we need to reassert the principle of limited government, which is necessary at every level of government, including at the city level. It's going to require us, in looking forward as we are preparing for the years to come, a reduction of debt that we have taken on, that we've inherited through previous administrations. We need to do that because we cannot refocus our efforts on basic services that make the town go well, that serve our businesses and serve our community, unless we do it. Because it's the people who make a city work, not the government. And I think there's a leadership definition that I've taken to heart for many years. Leadership is knowing what to do next, knowing why that's important, and knowing how to bring appropriate resources to bear on the problem at hand. Our problem is the debt and things that hold us back. We got to figure out how to move forward from there.
Thanks, Jim. Michael?
I get asked this question every day as I'm walking through the stores. What are you going to do if you become elected? So I'm just going to try to put some tangible answers for you. In the 4 years, if I'm elected, I want to make sure that the deconstruction of the DDA starts. It may take more than 4 years for the DDA to be dissolved. They have incurred a lot of debt and they continue to stack that debt up. And we will be responsible for that if we dissolve the DDA, but those tax dollars can begin to go back to the schools, back to the emergency services, and not be passed around the private club they call the DDA. Second, I think if we do that, we will make ourselves more attractive for businesses, which is what we want in the first place, is to grow Woodland Park for businesses so that you and I have places to go and shop and be a part of. So I think that's a tangible thing. In 4 years, if you see that happen, you can say, Michael was a part of that.
Thank you, Michael. Noel?
We all agree that experience is very important. You don't want the mechanic that started that day to work on your car. You want the guy that's been there for 10 years working on your car because he's going to fix it quick and he's going to do it right. I've been on council for 6 years. I have the experience. I understand how the government works here, the municipality. I understand how our city works because I've been here since 2001. So as mayor, I'm going to continue the incredible things that our council has been doing and what we've done over the last 6 years. Some of the things: debt reduction, sensible and restrained spending for the city essentials, public safety and security. A lot of you know that I fought for the police officers to increase their salaries. That was a huge thing that I did 4 years ago, and now they're doing very well. Beautification of the downtown, community partnership on quality of life issues. We love Woodland Park. It's a beautiful place to live, and everybody agrees with that. I've never heard a negative comment about beautiful Woodland Park. And attraction and retain the best employees
Thanks,
for our
Noel.
city.
Thanks
Thank you.
very much. Val?
Thank you. I'm interested in bringing stronger leadership to the council as mayor than we've had in the past, to invest the energy with the council, inspiration of the council to various issues, to motivate the council to read, study, analyze, and propose solutions, lead the city to promote recurring events, which will bring extra revenue to businesses, and enhance public relations. I want to lead the business attractors for the high-tech industry, which will bring in more families to assist school system revenue. I want to lower property taxes through mill rate reduction. That will help higher quality education, lower taxes for businesses, and promote 1G neighborhood broadband. I want to be an advocate for stronger safety measures, including the traffic and community involvement. I want to promote more convention and visitor events. And most of all, additionally, I want to promote more planning towards open and green space environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Rusty?
Individually, probably I'm not going to accomplish much of anything because I've learned that it takes 4 council members minimum to do anything. So I have established my priorities. The only one I'll talk about in this 1 minute is my number 1 priority, which is what caused me to become involved with the city council and running for the office. I would like to work with the city councils to identify the inconsistencies or to convince them that there are sufficient inconsistencies in the municipal code that it's something that we should tackle as a team. That means working with the city staff initially, and then the planning commission, and finally, as it comes to a final vote, with the city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. So now all of you got the feel for what 60 seconds feels like. So I have specific questions for each of you. Again, 1 minute response, and I didn't know what order you'd be setting in tonight, so I'll have to search around here. Kelly, the question I have for you is, do you think housing affordability is an issue in our city? If yes, what do you plan as mayor on doing to improve that condition?
Thank you, Carol. Affordable housing has been talked about as long as I've been here as a staff member and as a council person. It's been challenging, and I don't know what the answer is. I think one of the biggest things around that is the definition of what affordable housing is, because I think it's relative to your circumstances individually. As mayor, I believe that it's not something that is solved by the city council. I believe that it's something that's solved by the community and the different folks living in the community with the expertise to figure out how that works. Council, that's a private property issue. It's really something that developers and even in conjunction with other governmental entities might be able to put a formula together that works. We have some examples in town that have happened out on 67 in that small apartment complex. Thank you.
60 seconds does come
goes
pretty
fast.
quickly, doesn't it? And I'd like to remind all the candidates that there are no right or wrong answers. In fact, sometimes those of us sitting on this side like to hear your thought process on how you might look for a solution to the question that I might be posing. There's, again, understanding how you would get to the core of an issue is just as important as do you have a response or a solution for that issue. So, Bob, the question I have for you to begin with is, for this tax year, the city council voted to keep the property tax rate the same, but that was actually the mill levy rate, but because of increased valuations, taxes rose for most property owners. Was that the right thing to do? Lower the rate?
Well, that's a good question for a newcomer.
That's why I gave it to you.
So I did attend some of the sessions and listen to some of the input backwards and forwards on it. I think the struggle that I saw was that to remove the citizens voted for the mill levy increase, and at the same time, the city has a large amount of debt. And so there was a balancing act going on. It's like, okay, are we going to address the issue of the large debt we have and then address the issue of reducing the mill levy? Or is it on the other side, well, government is never responsible with money. They're always going to spend it if you give it to them. Should we just reduce the debt? So those are the two sides of the question that I saw.
That's a good answer. Doris, since you've already brought it up, I want to ask you a question. Coronavirus. It's obviously a concern.
I don't have it.
That won't count against your 60 seconds. What do you believe the city should do to prepare for this health emergency or any disaster, man-made or natural?
The city is actually very well prepared for most natural disasters. I just had the honor of touring the wastewater treatment plant this week. And one of the questions asked there was, do you have backup generators? Do you have battery systems and so on and so forth? We do. Mm-hmm. And every department within the city has its own disaster plan that dovetails into the city's overall plan, that then dovetails into the county's plan, that dovetails into PPACG's plan, and then governed by the state regulations. The state has issued a level 2 emergency situation for coronavirus. And that's why we are at that level. We can't really change that on our own. And that's why we're here going ahead with this particular event this evening. We don't know what we don't know. I always use that term. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but as a mayor and a council, our job is to try to look around those next corners and figure that out. Thank you.
Thanks, Dar. Jim, this has already been brought up, and I will give this question to you. The Downtown Development Authority, or the DDA, has attempted to promote and develop Woodland Station. That's a prime piece of commercial real estate in the heart of the city's downtown corridor. What is your opinion about how the DDA is managing the development of Woodland Station, and what would you do with Woodland Station?
Well, the way that the DDA started, from all the research I've done, was not to our liking. We missed opportunities. We put poor opportunities forward that really were not workable. The most recent opportunity that I saw here in the DDA meeting that ended up falling through, frankly, was not a workable plan. There's been a lot of frustration, both in, I know, people in the community and even with myself observing it. I would prefer to see that area developed in such a way that it was green space enough and the ability to have events and attract people to this community from other communities, certainly up the hill. I'd like to see that happen as quickly as possible. I'd like to see the DDA turn its focus to paying off the debt and get the thing out of the way. It should have never been started to begin with. TIF financing is a scam, in my opinion. And we need to get away from those types of opportunities and move to better ones.
Thank you, Jim. Michael, you brought this up, so I'm glad I've got the question for you. The city's comprehensive plan will be updated this year. What do you think this plan should focus on and why?
The future of Woodland Park. If we would have started bypass talks 20 years ago, we may all be taking a bypass right now. But if we don't start planning that now, 20 years from now, we're going to sit here and be cussing about traffic twice as much. Being able to look forward, not the comprehensive plan is a great plan, and moving forward and looking at that going, what can we change? What have we changed in the comprehensive plan? What have we given exceptions to? Height restrictions, stuff like that, that will allow new businesses to come in. But overall, I mean, we all have our own picture of what we want Woodland Park to be. And that's what's beautiful about the comprehensive plan, is because you all get to show up again. You get to come be a part of that. And so the comprehensive plan is cool. It's voted on by 7 people, but it's created by these people and created by Woodland Park citizens. And so being a part of that excites me. It excites me to know what Woodland Park might look like for my grandkids.
Thanks, Michael. Good answer. All of them are good answers. No, the city, once a decision is made, how would you discuss an issue out in the community if you were not in the majority?
In in the past 6 years, once a decision's made, you're all together and you move forward with that decision. And out in the community, I would be a champion for that decision as the council goes forward. That's how it should be. That's how it should be in the future. That's how we've always operated, regardless whether you're in the minority or not. Depending on the decision as council, if it's a 4-3 vote, you accept it, you move on, and you try to work for the goal of whatever the city council was at that time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Val, a few of your campaign signs declare you support preserving the character of Woodland Park. In the next 10 to 15 years, what will we be talking about? Not previously discussed, but a topic that nobody saw coming.
So preserving the character of Woodland Park, for me, has several aspects. We all moved here for certain reasons, which may or may not go into the future with the development that's planned. Open spaces and green spaces are key to most of us who moved here. We'd like high quality, low density housing. We'd like to have the opportunity to have the citizens continue to have their vote counted towards the comprehensive plan. So preserving the character has to do with the Western historic mountain town that we have. Most of us moved here for that reason. We didn't move here to have it paved over with chrome and glass. And that's my vision, is to preserve those values that most of us came here to.
Just a quick follow-up. In 10 to 15 years, though, what do you think might be our challenges then?
So we have a big housing situation. We're looking to build out to about 14,000 right now. That's what our water resources have available to us. And we have a challenge to fit those people in. So high density housing is a problem if we're going to go for 14,000 buildup. Water is always a problem. We on council are always looking at water taps and water resources. Kip Wiley's great at that. And we always applaud him for doing that.
Thanks, Phil. Rusty, if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
There's several that I'd like to change, but the one that comes to mind immediately is the open space rule. And I just recently discovered that through a question on Nextdoor when we were talking about the growth rate versus open space and build out. The definition in the municipal code is the space between buildings. So the flaw in the municipal code that I see and would like to see changed. Now I'm going to use the village of Tamarack as the example because that was the appeal I led. The way it's worded, every single little yard between every single one of the 53 buildings, the 16 by 20 foot added together makes up the 40%. So you get 4 acres worth of open space theoretically the way the code is written. Yet if you look at 53 units that occupy 100% except for the little storage area for the snow and ice, there's no open space. So I'd like to see better wording on the definition of open space and green space.
Thank you. Don, welcome. Introduction to everyone. Don DeZellem, running for city council. Don, the candidates have agreed that whenever you got here, we give you a chance to catch your breath. And then if you could now just give us a 2-minute introduction or less, depending on how you feel.
All right. I'm Don DeZellem. I've been a resident up here for the last 2.5 years full time. I actually first came up to Woodland Park to live in about 1990, 1991, sometime in there. I came up to manage the McDonald's up here. And at that time, I became active in the community in the Rotary Club, helping with the Christmas parade, which at that time was ran by the city and such. I like this town. I've always kept my roots up here. There was a short about 5 years where I worked down in the Springs and up in Thornton, and commuted actually on Sundays every week to come to church here. So I did keep my pulse in the town, kept an eye on what was going on. And when the opportunity struck to come back up here and work and to live, I did it. So I'd just like to be a part of what takes this town into the next 10, 20 years.
Don, could you also let us know what you think you would like to accomplish as a city council member?
What I'd like to accomplish is to be able to see more citizen input into the community or into the council by having like coffees with the council, that kind of a thing. A lot of towns that are bigger, you know, they have dedicated councilmen for areas and they have office hours. Well, up here, you know, how do you talk to your council person unless you know who they are? And seeing as we serve at large, you know, you go to any one of us. So what I'd like to do is have an opportunity where people can come, drop in, tell us what's on your mind on like a quarterly basis or so. So I'd like to see more community involvement into the council input.
Thank you. And just so you know, Ms. Miller will be holding up that obnoxious yellow sign saying when you have 30 seconds left and then stop when it's time to stop. But I think you'll do fine. Let's go on to Kelly with my next question. In relation to the budget, how important are staff wages and are you willing to sacrifice in other areas to fairly compensate the city employees?
You started yet? Thank you. We've learned over the years with attrition and the loss of valuable employees that we've invested a lot of time and money in bringing them along to be competent and to be able to do their jobs effectively in a timely manner. And to have that turnover, and a lot of it comes from wages. We have a hard time competing mostly because of what's down the hill. And so that turnover is a challenge. And if we don't keep up with market and we get reports on the market that are done by a qualified consultant, then we're going to continue to lose those good and valuable people. We've seen that forever in the police department. We're trying to solve that, and I think it's a very important part of the budget. However, if we have challenges in balancing our budget, that is the biggest bang for your buck is in personnel. It's the biggest cost of any organization, private or public. So it's a balancing act, but it is very important because it's costly to lose employees. Very costly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, Michael, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I want to address that too, because we are seeing right now, it was broke this morning in the press that the sheriff is running an extra business to pay some extra people.
That
And
doesn't have anything to do with
No,
the
but what I'm
question.
saying
Your
is-
time is over. And the question is,
I
will
wanna-
now go to
about
Mr.
the law
Dzula,
enforcement wages?
No.
Oh, okay.
not in the county.
Perfect.
Mr. Zula-Aga, question for you. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town?
Great question. That's, I think, the key for us successfully setting a course for the next 10 years. I see in my bid for city council, I've gone door to door to our business owners and to some of the community as well to hear what's on their hearts. And I really see that rather than a number of us sitting up here on the dais and interacting with city employees, a number of us here on the dais need to interact with the community members in a real frank way and an open discussions to really diffuse some of the tensions. There's some pain that people carry, and to diffuse some of that in discussion and say, okay, now that we're at that level, where do we want to go? So that's how I would engage the community.
Thank you. Again, I will hold discretion to allow response or rebuttal, but if it doesn't pertain to the operations of City of Woodland Park, then I will cut those off. Just forewarned, and I am equal opportunity in that respect. So Bob, one of the questions Darwin, I wanted to ask you, this is because you've had such a long tenure now on the council. When the council is faced with a decision, it often wants resident feedback. Some have suggested we could poll residents on every major issue, but others worry that this could be tiring for residents and lead to low response rates. They'd rather trust those who represent them to study the issues and make good decisions. How would you address these concerns?
Absolutely. We have a representative form of government throughout our nation, our state, and our city. It's not a pure democracy. As Madison said, pure democracies are short-lived and violent. We don't want that. That goes back to Greek times. We are a form of democracy, certainly, but we are a republic. That means I need to explain my principles to you, my ideas of governance, and then you need to trust me to act that way and vote that way. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree with me, but you can be assured that once I've set my priorities and told you who I am, that's who I'll be as your mayor. That's representative form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Jim, this one, I know that there's not an easy response, but I'm going to ask anyway. Some in our community say we have a traffic problem. What do you think about this, and how would you mitigate those concerns or help to change the situation?
Well, to begin with, let me say it was a missed opportunity many years ago not to do the bypass. We've seen this sort of thing be successful in other communities around Colorado. When you have our type of a situation, it's scary to know that every day we've got cyanide trucks, huge cyanide trucks going back and forth on 24. When we've got people that are speeding up and down 24 as well too. It can hamper businesses downtown as well, because 24 is not often workable for people coming in whom we'd like to do business in our community. I personally believe we need to work on slowing down traffic on 24. There are a couple, few ideas that we can talk about as council, but I think we need to relook at the bypass. I think we got to go back into that and consider what we can do. We can't do it unless we get our financial house in order, but we're going to have to begin planning now, because I think it can be a benefit to the community, and we can maintain the character of the community if we do that.
Okay. Michael,
I'd like to rebuttal on that. Can I have 30 seconds?
as long as it pertains to
Yes.
City of Woodland Park.
I think a city council member can make a great relationship with CDOT. And right now, the bypass is number 4 on CDOT's list, which means CDOT's not ever going to talk about the bypass or give us any money or even begin to do a bid on what it would cost to do a bypass until we get rid of 1, 2, and 3. And those are numbers and things that have come directly from our city. And so we have to, as city council, we have to pressure CDOT, because CDOT controls 24 and 67. So we could talk about what we're going to do, but we have to really make that relationship with CDOT and come forward.
Jim, please, 30 seconds.
Yes. So this is something that I can bring to the table. I do, because of the work I've done in the state, my experience in the state. We can have these discussions. So I've talked with the current lady that's running CDOT, and they definitely are prioritizing and reprioritizing the projects in the state. So we have an opportunity right now in a change in that position with someone that has new and different ideas to be able to go and make our case. And I think there's a possibility that we can do that. Nonetheless, whatever the priority is and where we are in the priority structure, we have to address the issue.
Thank you. Michael, if you're not elected, this is a good question, because you have had the pulse of the community and you have participated in the council process. If you're not elected, what would you do to try to help work on ideas or issues that are still important to you?
I'm going to continue to be a part of this community for years to come. My kids were, well, I got one kid that was born on Woodland Avenue. She's a Woodland Park native. She's 5 years old now. And I'm going to continue to be a part of this community. You're going to continue to see me in those seats. And truth be told, if I'm not elected, there might be some appointments around. And so I may come up and make that argument. I don't need all your votes. I just need one. You get to vote for 3 council members. So I think that was a loaded question because I don't think I'll ever have to answer that. But if for perhaps April 7th comes and I miss it with a card draw, because that's happened before, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be a part of this community for 20 years, and we're going to continue to tell a great story about Woodland Park and about what it offers. We'll continue to try to bring ideas to council like we have in the past, and we'll continue to be the pulse of the community. Without a doubt, social media is where it's at. And so
Thank you. And I certainly do hope that you'll participate in the public engagement with a comprehensive plan. Now, this is because of the role you now hold as a council liaison, but the city's charter specifically prohibits the use of municipal funds or resources to incentivize private development. However, the Downtown Development Authority may do so. What do you think the DDA is doing right or wrong? And do you think the city council should have a more active role in DDA operations?
Do you think that's a loaded question?
It's intended to be.
Oh.
Because you're the expert.
If I look at the history of the DDA's job was to bring businesses up here when the economy was slow. Currently, the economy is doing great. The DDA's kind of doesn't need to really give any new TIF agreements. When it comes to the property that the DDA owns, I think that's kind of where the question is going. It's their property. They do have a way of development on that property. It's a tough question. I don't think 30 seconds or a minute's going to answer it, but they're doing a good job. They're trying to get it developed as soon as possible. Right now, we have 2 developers looking into it. Obviously, there's a lot behind the scenes that I can't talk about, but the DDA is really trying their best to get that developed.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Val, again, I'm going to put you on the hot spot like I did Noel because you have a public record and I know you. In 2000, Woodland Park voters approved a 1.09 sales tax to supplement the RE2 school district budget, while retiring one of 2 school district property tax mill levies for city residents. Are you in favor of ignoring that majority vote to overturn this tax, and why or why not?
So this tax was voted in by the voters. We on city council look at everything in our budget, all our taxes, all our mill rates, all our structures. The school put on a tremendous presentation showing this year and every year how they're using that money. It's well used at this point. We have to look at all our taxing, not just the 1.09. One of the problems that some people think is that there wasn't a sunset put on it. So the review process of that is probably something that the citizens should look at, because the citizens were the one who voted it in. We on city council do look at all these entities every year, and this one seems to have a good byproduct, a good result for the school.
Thanks, Val. And Jim, I know from the last forum that was held at the high school that you specifically said you would be against that tax, or that you would vote against deleting that tax.
I made it very clear that we're going to have to adjust what we're doing with that. I agree with everything Val said, but we're going to have to get to a point where the school district is going to really have to take a look at their budget and how they're doing things so that we can make an adjustment here. We cannot survive in the long run as a city with an 8.49% tax. This is one of those that we need to take a look at. I've spoken with people, and very cogent options were suggested to the school board for ways for them to cut money at the time. So I think this whole transparency issue that we talk about a lot, we really need to rethink and rediscover that. Now, I agree with Val. We've got to go to the citizens with some ideas that we have, or at least we need to make the case here from the council chambers. But we do need to take a look at that, because our businesses, frankly, can't survive in the long run, asking people to come up and pay such a large sales tax.
Thanks. And Dar, please.
I just recently, in fact, this week, met with the superintendent and the chief financial officer for the school district. I think the reason for the meeting is I was pretty surprised to see that in the budget, that sales tax number now reaches $2.436 million. When we did it, it was projected to be about $1 million, offset by about $700,000 in property tax. In all fairness, I don't know what the offset would have been for the property tax that would have compared to that 2.436. It would have been a much larger number because of the assessed valuations as well. The point is, though, I don't have a better idea. And they are, as Val said, they are really making good use of that.
Thank you. Michael, first.
If we want Woodland Park to be a flourishing community, we are going to have a flourishing school system. And although City Council doesn't control the school's budget, something like this tax has really helped the school. I stood across from the students when they asked about this specific question. And there is no way we're going to continue to flourish as a city if our school system isn't flourishing. And right now, the story at our school system is much like the story of our own town. Take your kid to Manitou, take your kid down to the private school, go to CSCS or whatever. But we need to change the story of the school system.
Thank you. Noel was next.
So we have to expand our vision here. I wouldn't say our vision, but we have to expand this discussion to the state level. You have Amendment 23 that dictates the funding of schools, and that has been getting worse and worse every year. They just passed it again to do full funding for kindergarten, which now that goes to the taxpayers. I'm kind of shocked Jim doesn't bring that up and talk about how once the state decides to fully fund schools, then we can consider reducing that 1.09 sales tax, maybe even to 0.5. But right now, that is needed for the school. We are the only school, we are only district in the state that actually has this, and this community is supporting the school.
Jim, 30 seconds as a rebuttal or retort or whatever you want to call it, and then we'll go to Kelly for 60 seconds.
Unfortunately, having worked in state government, I can't control the stupid things that the legislature does. They don't fund roads, and they don't have the right way to think about funding schools. The negative factor comes in our case, because thankfully, of our school choice approach to so that parents can choose where to send their kids. Our local high school and the elementary schools, like we talked about CS. I sent my kids to CSCS, sent them to TCA down in Colorado Springs. I get that.
Okay, that was
Because of that,
30 seconds.
that caused us a real problem.
Yes.
And now the school needs to pick that up as well, too. And we need to encourage and work with them to figure out how to handle it.
Thank you. Kelly, 60 seconds.
Well, I addressed this at the school debate, or not debate, but forum, and this is a city sales tax. This is a city sales tax that's imposed on the people. The city gave away the ability to tax 1.09% to the school district. I think it's made a great difference, as has been stated here. I think it's awesome. I think what's been done with it has been outstanding. Don't get me wrong. My issue with it is that it does not sunset. I think that at some point it needs to sunset, and the traditional funding sources for schools needs to be reinstated. So with that, I agree. It was a great idea. It worked well. It's not an appropriate funding source for schools in the traditional sense, and that's my education and background. I think a sunset needs to be in place at some point in the future. Into perpetuity compromises the city's ability to function.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Don, you missed the first round of questions, but I do have a question specifically for you, and probably a number of other people on this dais could answer it as well, but I'm going to give this to you. Many of the candidates here have already served on council or are serving on council now. What can you offer our city that's unique from these candidates, aside from the fact that you remember when we had dirt roads?
I would say that probably the biggest thing I can offer is the fact that, unlike many of them up here, I have no background at all in politics. I'm not a student of politics. I've never ran for office before. And so I'm coming into this with kind of a average man's approach to it. Kind of like that guy a couple years ago, you know, Plumber Joe or whatever his name was. So yeah, Joe the plumber. So I think that's what I offer is just, I'm an average person just like you out there, and I want to do what you would like to see done. So that's how I feel I should respond to the questions that come up before the council.
Thanks, Don. And Rusty, I'll finish my questions with you. If elected, what 3 steps would you take to put our city on a firmer financial footing? Or 1 step or 2 steps?
Well, number one, I think the city council does have the responsibility of establishing policy. So they have to give clear policy to the city staff when they're putting together a budget. Now, I have looked at the budget and have found several line items that are fluff. We could absolutely, they shouldn't even be collected. The vendor fee, as an example, I learned that today. We're still collecting 3.3% in a vendor fee, which is $174,000 that should not be collected because it cannot be given back out. In 1996, in 1994, it was 3.3. In 95, it went to 1. In 96, it went to 0%. And we are still collecting it, and you can see it in the budget. So with proper guidance to the city staff, I would send them back to look at the budget and remove all fluff. And then if they don't do their job, then the city council would step in at a microscopic level. Val is very good at that, and we would help them.
Thank you, Rusty. And I'll allow Robert first, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that. I agree that with the vendor tax, it would be a sign of goodwill back to the business community that we're not taking from them. Some of the stories that I've heard from our business community is they're hurting. They're hurting. Their bottom line's hurting, and they're paying it out in credit card fees anyway. The second thing is I drive an 18-year-old car. Do we really need new vehicles? Do we really need them until the debt's paid down? So those are just a couple of areas I go, well.
Thank you. Kelly?
I just want to clarify something. With my background, I just want to clarify, this is not an additional tax.
That is
The
correct.
3.3% vendor fee, and the state still allows a small one, is a credit that the businesses can take to, it was originally, and the name is misleading, but it was originally intended to compensate them for the vehicle of collecting the tax on behalf of the city. So we account for it separately because we said we would. When it was phased out, we said we would still account for that in a separate line item. And so it's not an additional tax. It is a credit that was given to the businesses.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you, Kelly, for that clarification. I didn't know either. Rusty, please.
Yeah, and Kelly is correct. It's misnamed. It's the city that collects 100% of the taxes. And in the past, vendors could then apply for a rebate essentially. And it's really to compensate them for the amount of work that they had to go through when they're calculating and doing all the work. It used to be 3.3, then 1, now 0. But we still have it as a line item that's in the budget that could be reduced. And I spoke to Darren today. Are they looking at that? And in fact, no number is being looked at. We want to wait until the new finance system is put in place where it's easier for the businesses to establish what taxes they need to pay to the city.
Thank you for that response, Don.
I just wanted to add, I totally agree with what Kelly and Rusty have said. It's an irritant, if nothing else, but it is gotten to be a fairly large number, which is kind of surprising. That money belongs to the businesses. We can't claim to be business friendly and do things like that. And that's, I'm sorry, but you'll see that all over my website and all my material. It's just it's much like the license fee, the $50. Similar kind of a concept. Either we're business friendly or we're not.
Thanks, Star. Anyone else want to chime in on that one before I start the questions that have come from the audience? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Val, please.
So 2 months ago, I put up my Facebook page, my web page, talking about the sales tax vendor fee and the business license fee. I got on city council in 2016 for the reason of supporting businesses and trying to get them more success rate in this town. This is one area we can look at as city council. And I was there early and often, and there's all kinds of other things we can do, including a better business environment, walkability, all those kind of things that we talk about on Main Street and keep Woodland Park beautiful.
Thank you, Val.
Carol,
Okay,
can I-
Louise,
Carol,
I'm sorry, go
may I have
ahead.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, and then we'll go to Noel.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what I said also. When I say that the council's job is policy, and you know that better than, I don't want it to be mistaken that I'm in support of the city council doing the city staff's job. It's just you have a difference between policy and execution. And the only time the policymakers get involved with execution is when you see the execution not meeting the policy objectives that have been given to them. Then the experience and maturity has to help them do the hard job.
Rusty, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Noel, please.
So I'd just like to add to this that the city staff is looking into the vendor fees. It's not like it's something new. That's probably why Darwin says he's discussed it, because we have. I've discussed it with the city staff. I've discussed it with the finance director. We are doing our due diligence behind the scenes. We're just not out there bragging about it. So just to let the community know that the council is aware of it, the council has asked the city to look into it, and hopefully we come up with a good result to benefit everyone. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Kelly, did you have another? I'm sorry. Okay, okay, the Queen's wave. Okay. Some of these, some of these are in Sanskrit, and I'm going to try to interpret them. There's no rhyme or reason on who I will present this question to, and as you already know, we're pretty good on time, and if there are responses to an individual's answer, we'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that. I'm going to give this one to Dar. Would you be willing to approve the city's general fund expenditures at the 2020 level, those that were in the 2020 budget, plus 2% for inflation, to be able to pay off the debt for Memorial Park and the Aquatic Center by 2026?
I certainly want to pay off the debt on Memorial Park and on the Aquatic Center as quickly as possible. I don't know that I would, across the board, say I would be willing to freeze the budget at the 2020 level, but it's entirely possible. And I have seen projections and have been preparing my own that say that may indeed be possible to do, and still pay down the debt, and then so on and so forth. So yeah, I think it's something that I would consider, although again, we don't know what we don't know. So to make a blanket statement about that as we sit here tonight would be irresponsible, and I won't do it, but I would certainly consider it.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
I just want to make the point, it's absolutely doable. It's always doable. In Congress, in DC, in Denver, every place that I've worked on legislation, there's always a requirement in government's mind that they've got an inflation adjustment to go up. When in candor, we can always look at every aspect of the budget and see what is most appropriate to do. Now, there will be some aspects of city services that will have very real increased needs because they're basic services of the city. And we can look within that 2% there, but we absolutely have to tighten our belts. We've got to do it now.
Thank you. Does anyone
To
else
pay off
want
the
to?
debt, sorry.
Yes, 30-second.
I am super glad we got a bunch of guys up here that understand spreadsheets because that is not my forte. But I do know we have some excellent staff and we have some positions that we need to create for this city. We don't have a full-time marketing person. We don't have a full-time network person. We don't have these positions, right? And so I don't understand necessarily when they say they want to freeze the city's budget. But I do say this, if we're going to take money away from our city and then ask them to advance vision, that just don't happen.
Okay. We'll go to Rusty first and then to Jim.
I just want to clarify, just because you freeze a budget does not mean you have frozen every line item. You freeze the top dollar amount, and then you give new policy guidance to the city staff, and they go back and work the numbers. But it's very possible, and I at this point in time, I would probably lean towards looking at freezing it. I'd have to get into it a little bit more, but I'm inclined to say, yes, with our debt, it would not be a bad idea to freeze it, but then give the latitude, establish the policy guidance for Darren, and then let him take his staff back and figure out where the lines need to be adjusted to make the numbers work.
Thank you. And who was in that? Jim and then Bob.
I think it's really interesting, and it's, I guess, nobody's fault, maybe very few people's fault in this room. When we've got ourselves in the situation that we're in, and we're talking about marketing people, I mean, if you've got a business, you want to do everything you can to grow it, but you can't do everything. Now, maybe we can do a marketing person and still freeze the budget. I don't know. And we've got to move forward, but you can't move forward by maintaining the kind of debt that we're running. It hampers the city administration, and it hampers us doing the things that we need to do as a city. So we've got to be able to give the administration the things that they need to do the things that we as council members will want to accomplish. We got to get into that path now.
Okay, Jim, now Bob.
It's Robert, but you can call me Bob. When I was a kid, I was a Bob. That's all. So
And you can call me anything you want.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
thank you for your open door policy.
Please, I know you have a very valid answer.
So I come out of free enterprise. I'm out of small business. And just because you have the money doesn't mean you need to spend it. And I think in government, we have a different philosophy, and that's if we got this money, we better spend it. Otherwise, next year we won't get any. And I think if you're perfectly honest, at least from a business owner standpoint, you go, you know what? There's going to be a rainy day. I'm going to set that aside. And I think we should look at that with the city's budget in the same way and not be afraid to put everything on the table and go, do we really need this right now? If we can knock this off in 5 years or 6 years, knock the debt out, then why not? We can then start to add things that are wants.
Kelly, please.
Yes, thank you. I just want to point out that the debt that we're in now is fairly new. It's within the last few years. And before that, when I left employ at the city in 2014, we were about a year and a half away from being debt-free, all funds in the city. We've done it. We have paid off. And I'll tell you, over the years, while I was the finance director, we paid off a significant amount of debt, both leases, long-term debt, and we were close to paying off the COPs. We absolutely can do it again. And I don't know if anyone has listened, but that's my mantra. Thank you.
Dar.
Just within the last week, someone asked me, have I actually looked at these debt instruments myself? And is it true that we can't begin to pay down until 2025? I can tell you I have. One of them is a book about 800 pages. Thanks to Emily and Darren for making time for me to come in and take a look. I'm pretty good at looking at those kinds of things because I've created hundreds of them in my career myself. I can confirm There is no way to pay any of these down before 2025. It just doesn't exist.
And Noel, and we'll finish up with this topic after Noel's response.
Can I get a minute and a half?
No.
Can I see you got a minute and a half? I'm going to talk real fast. So I've also sat and read those books. It took me about 2 hours to scan through them. One's 600 pages and the other's 300 pages. I had to verify how we could pay off this debt. We can't touch it because they're bond debts till December 1st, 2025. So we're just going to have to accept it. We can put money aside to do a large payment. And if you do look at the payment schedule, there is an example of a large payment in 2025 that would reduce our interest. But I have to remind, our debt is manageable and it's on par with all other communities our size. We also were voted into the debt, and we are just managing the debt very, very well.
Val, I will allow you to respond to that, please.
Thank you.
Your button.
So for 4 years, I've been on this kick for budget efficiency, which is the goal is actually to address the debt, but practicing common sense and fiscal responsibility to streamline the budget to optimal efficiency and eliminate bloat and waste is just like we do at our homes. We do it in our personal lives, at our personal home budgets, and we got to get back to that attitude. Just like we tempted not to go into debt at home, we've got to do more of the needs, not wants.
Carol, I'd like to follow up on that.
We're going to end this one, and we're going to begin the new questions, and I'll start with you. You'll love it.
Wait a minute.
I'm going to give you.
I'm like Kelly at the moment.
I'm going to give you the context of this question without reading the entirety, but it has to do with water availability for the city and projects that draw down on that water availability. Let us know what you think about our management of water and water resources in the city.
Excellent. Our water is excellent. We have 3 sources right now. We've got the Homestead pipeline. We've got a bunch of wells at the golf course. A lot of people didn't know that. And then we have regular rainwater that goes into our reservoirs. As Val pointed out earlier, that we are around 12,000 residents that we can supply. We are looking at building a huge reservoir that can handle water for up to a year if we had a drought, which I highly doubt we'd have one. I think what we're doing water-wise is excellent. The council has been very vigilant on this. I've always promoted that water is the new gold, and we have to make sure that that resource is imperative, that we have enough of it. We did just have an emergency session because our public works director brought us a bid to buy some water, and we were all here to buy that water. So we take it very seriously, and this community is going to make sure they can water their lawns and flush their toilets and have nice, clean water.
Thanks, Noel. Would anyone else like to talk to that? Dar?
It's just a comment. I think most people don't really understand. Noel mentioned that Kip brought us a couple of water rights that wanted to buy. They're $46,000 a piece. That is about 1 acre foot. It's a staggering, when you think about what that means to the population, it doesn't get you much. It's not my phone.
And I'm sure they're going to turn it off.
But anyway, $46,000 for one, and we're buying every one of them that comes our way.
Thanks. Val, you look like you might have something to add to that too.
I'll add two seconds worth.
Sure.
I guess it's over. No.
No, it's not.
So these shares for the citizens out there, Kip is able to pick off small shares because the big municipalities go after the big quantities. So he can pick off 2, 5, 10, where we can't go after the 40s and 50s, but everybody else is going after them. And so we're very fortunate. Kip keeps an eye on this. So we pick off 2, 4, 5 at a time, and nobody else is paying attention And so we've got a tremendous resource there that KIP brings us.
Thanks. This audience, I'm sure appreciated that. I think Jim was next.
Just real quick, we've done a good job in the city with that, as is attested by these. That pressure is going to increase if we're maintaining Democrat government at the state level, because these water rights issues, bill after bill after bill, this year in particular, last year. And so we're going to have to stay on top of it. So it's a great resource we have in this city right now. We're going to have to
Good
keep that
management.
valuable person going at it.
No.
So one of our big debts is $8 million. And a lot of people don't talk about that. It's our new reservoir. I truly believe that is a good debt. It's a needed debt. And so when we talk about bad debt, you might hear from people talking about the aquatic center. The community wanted that, and the council is smart enough, and we knew at the time that we could fit it in our budget. We didn't raise taxes. We didn't we didn't ask for any mill levies. We made sure we worked within the parameters that the community gave us. And like I said, it's manageable debt.
Thank you. I'm going to give this one to you, Don, because we haven't got to hear from you that much. And really, this is something that's going to impact all of you if you're elected. How soon would you be able to respond to communications, official communications by email and text? How would you deal with what happens outside of council chambers?
I always carry a device with me that I can receive texts and emails on, so I can respond fairly quickly.
Okay. I'm not sure of the context of this, but would anyone else like to talk to this in knowing that some of you work full-time, some of you work part-time, some of you are retired, like me, yay. What amount of time will you be able to dedicate to your job on council, whether you're a mayor or a council member? Don, I saw your hand first, and then we'll go to Bob.
Well, it's a time management issue. It's a time management issue, in my opinion. My second career has been teaching for a couple of universities, actually 3. I've cut it back to 2 because of all of this, and cut back the number of courses that I'm teaching, even at the 2. But I'm online all day long. If I'm not teaching in the classroom itself, then I'm teaching online. So I'm online with my laptop in my lap almost 24/7. My wife is not thrilled with that, but I will respond to an email or a text message in minutes. It just happens.
I'm more relational how I deal with information that comes to me. I read it. I try to hear what the person who's communicating with me is trying to say, and then I ponder it, and then either call, text, or make a response to it, and then I'm very happy to get together and talk about it face to face.
Okay, thank you. Val, and then we'll do Noel, and then Kelly.
Thank you. So I'm fully retired. I retired when I was 45. I do volunteer work, but I'm available 100% of the time. So the mayor is a full-time job if it's done right. And I will plan to do it right. So I'm available 24/7, but I'm also available 40 to 60 hours a week because I don't have another full-time job. I'm fortunate that I retired, and my wife and I are in town almost all the time. So I'm able to respond immediately. I usually call instead of text, but I'm available on either of my phones anytime.
Okay, no.
So I'm pretty good. I can text people before they text me. So I'm so efficient with that. I can read minds. But yes, most people know me. I text them within seconds. But regardless of that, a couple years ago, I had a full-time job, had a small computer business. I was the varsity soccer coach for the high school, and I probably missed only one meeting. And so time efficiency is pretty high on my list. I can get a lot done in one day, and I drive fast. So,
Kelly, please.
Thank you. I just want to point out that the communication sometimes, if we are having an inquiry about something that is a quasi judicial matter, on our future agenda, understand that we are not allowed to engage and communicate about that because we are required, as if we're sitting as a judge, to hear the evidentiary matter before us and not have any outside communication before that, so that it's a fair playing field for the applicant, and who is, if you want to equate it to a courtroom, it is the defendant or the plaintiff. And so that's the restriction there. But as far as communication goes, I try to respond. I am self-employed and therefore have flexibility. Thank you.
That's a good answer. I think Jim was next, and then we'll go to Michael, and then Rusty.
My wife can tell you, I carry 4 hats successfully, quite typically, and I'm definitely on the phone. I think she also can be negative on that from time to time, but no, it's a top priority when you're doing something like this, to manage your time in such a way as to respond to what's important. And this becomes a very important thing. The citizens are looking for that response, and they need an answer sometimes. And when they feel they get the answer, when they feel they get the response, it gives them comfort that they're seeing leadership from the council and from the mayor.
Thank you. Michael?
I'm self-employed. I live right in downtown Woodland Park, and I carry a phone and
You weren't supposed to be doing that, but that's okay.
text message online. I could tell you the analytics from, the social media responses, but they're there within the hour. I was getting texts, "Are you going to make it tonight? Coming up the pass." Yeah, I'll be there. I'm 5 minutes out. So responding to people is part of the game when you sign up for this, and having an ear open to the community is probably the most important responsibility we're going to be given. And so responding to the community will be there. So
Thanks, Michael. Rusty, please.
I guess since everybody's commented on their work status, I am fully retired. I think Val and I are the only two that are fully retired. I think there's a piece that's not coming out. My preference is to do face-to-face, and with the retirement ability, and it's a luxury, I like to meet with the people. So I go to City Hall quite often, or I'll set up meetings. In terms of the citizens, I would invite any citizen that wants to meet with myself if I were to be elected. I would love to do it face to face rather than over the internet. I will instantly respond over the internet if I can't set up a meeting, but I would be available anytime to meet face to face and just talk.
Thank you. Michael, there was a question about your aversion to spreadsheets, but I think you've answered that one. We didn't.
we've got so many good ones up here. We need some other talents on the deck.
And you make a good point.
That was Noel texting him ahead of time, by the way.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I'm gonna throw this. This is a softball, but it could open up a can of worms for us. And I'm gonna throw this to. I already picked on Noel and Val. Kelly, I'm going to start with you because I kind of asked you this question before, but it'll give everyone an opportunity to chime in. Does Woodland Park need additional affordable housing? If yes, what would you specifically do to encourage new projects? Understanding that it's not the city government's responsibility, but is there a means for the city council to encourage that? And I bet I know who that question came from.
It's really challenging to come up with a solution from that perspective. This perspective of being on the elected officials' dais. I think providing information, there's a lot of tools out there. I mean, being resourceful is how we are successful and we learn and develop our businesses. We may not have the answers or we may not be able to do anything for someone, but being resourceful and giving them ideas on where they might get that at the federal level, at the state level, to get some incentive money or something to contribute, or grants to contribute to making a project like that come forward. I know the one on 67 utilized those programs to bring that affordable housing. It was labeled affordable housing. There's many definitions of that. As I said, it's really personal. But I think having the ability to provide resources to people and where they can find the information and assistance, I think would be valuable from our point of view. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
I do.
Well, I'll start with Noel, then we'll go to Michael, and then we'll go to Dar, and then we'll go to Bobby, and then Val.
In my experience, it's not what you know, but who you know.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing resource sitting here in the audience tonight, and I'm going to point them out. I'm going to name drop, and then someone can reach down there and pick up the name because I'll need it later. But Mr. John Schaefer back there wrote an amazing, I don't even know what to call it, but it went over all the options of how the city can look into affordable housing. And so I read it like 2 months ago. Sorry, I read it recently, but I was talking to some people about affordable housing, and I'm not going to name drop again, but working to find out the options.
I agree that was a terrific resource, and actually the city did pay for that assessment, but it does help individuals understand what is the definition of affordable housing.
Yeah, I wish I had it but John, you did an amazing job. So thank you very much.
And because I think everyone, or most everyone, would like to answer this. Dawn, did you have anything you wanted to add to the conversation? And I'm just going to go down the line.
No, I don't. Basically, I agree pretty much with Kelly that, we need to be a resource for people to be able to find out how they can apply for grants and that type of stuff to come in. The city does need affordable housing, however you consider it. But it's not really the city's job to provide it, but to encourage builders and such to find a way to do it.
That's okay. Bob?
Yeah, John, I have not seen your report and would like to read it. At the same time, I don't believe it's the city's or the government's role to pick winners and losers. And once you start having the idea of something outside of free enterprise and what creates demand and supply, you start manipulating it. And I think that gets problematic from a government standpoint of trying to legislate or create special favors for people to create the type of housing that would be favorable. I think the free market has the ability to create its own balance.
Dar?
Well, thanks a lot, Robert. You just stole my thunder, as a matter of fact. But so I totally agree. I'm a strong free market guy, and I think if affordable housing is needed, the free market will find a way to do that. I hate to get professorial, but it's kind of what I do. There's an economics term called the price elasticity of demand. Okay, that's the last time I'll say anything professorial. It just means that if the price is right, people will buy it. And if it isn't, they won't. And the free market will find a way to provide, to fill the need that's created in the market.
Jim?
The one thing that can hinder this is zoning policy. So a lot of people are up in arms about the Tamarack development, and I understand why. So I think Rusty suggested some things that I think I might agree with, at least to take a look at. But as a city council, we need to make sure that we are encouraging these free market principles. And I love you using price elasticity of demand. That gets me geeked out too. But we need to encourage our community to be a destination to live at as much as a place to go other places from. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we look forward.
Thanks. Michael?
You can stay at the Country Lodge for $1,500 a month. 2 people. You can just live there. You can live at the Country Lodge. That's like affordable housing in this town. $1,750 for the apartments. And, regular rent for like a family of three, I have a family of 5, can run you $1,750 to $2,500 for a house to fit you. That comprehensive plan that you come forward, the community comes forward, it needs to address heights because we can't build out. We can't build out. And I know nobody wants their view taken. But if we're going to build affordable housing, it is going to be up. And nobody likes to hear that. But I think that with the right designs, we can do it to keep Woodland Park beautiful.
Thank you. I'm going to come down the line. I think did you have another comment? Val, did you have another comment on this issue?
Yeah, so thank you. Affordable housing, I prefer to look at workforce housing. One of the problems we have in town is our teachers don't have places to live. They have to go up and down the pass. People live where they can afford. So affordable housing is where you can afford to live. The school's looking at solutions for that, but private sector is the one who will dictate the housing demand and the market. They will create the housing when and if it's demand, as has been stated before. But the comprehensive plan is something everybody can get involved with to affect the zoning, which will affect how the planning commission and the city council allocate resources for the city vision.
Thanks, Val. Rusty, please.
I did read that study, and it's very educational. We're using a term, though, a little incorrectly. The term affordability by HUD is anything that's 30% of your income or less. So for a millionaire, an affordable house is a mansion. So I want to change the dialogue from affordable housing to there's a bridge in the document, and it talks, I think there's 5 to 7 different groupings of housing. And if you look at the people I'm targeting to help out and hope the city would, it's the police, the city workers, the firemen, the teachers, and entry-level families, which puts you, if I remember, the $36K per year salary is down around the second and above on the bridge. That's where I think we should focus on.
You really need to meet John.
All before me, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Jim.
More on this?
Yeah.
Yes, please. And this will be my last question. Then I'm going to go to the press. So let's get this discussion out there. Jim, please. And then
Let's not concede that affordable housing is up. I mean, please, let's concede. And let's not, I agree with Rusty, let's not talk about affordable housing, and we're definitely not going to subsidize a dang thing. What we're going to do is make sure that the market is not hindered while it figures out where people are going to go. This city grows with the people, not with what we do up here. We got to figure out effective ways to stay out of the way so that people can choose. And so anyway, that's we can't concede bad, but we do want to make this a place where people want to live and work and make sure that that can happen while people are going up and down the road.
Michael, did you have an addition to that? 30 seconds, and then we'll go to Dar.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was asked as a hypothetical question, understanding that we can't control any housing. So when I say build up as a vision, it is simply to say that we're not buying anymore. There's no more Woodland Park property. I mean, it's national forest around us. So houses are going up. I will add this, major nonprofits, and I'm not even talking about Karis. Major nonprofits are moving here, and they are bringing families with them. Not Karis, other major nonprofits, and they're bringing families with them. I know of one nonprofit that has moved in the area and has brought 30 families from Texas, and they have done that because they can. And so when we talk about what's happening in Woodland Park, we have to hold on because it's coming, and we can't stop it. So the housing's coming, the businesses are coming, all of it's coming. Affordable housing in Colorado is kind of a joke term.
Dar.
I just wanted to highlight Rusty's comment about the HUD requirement or the HUD definition. I read not long ago that that number for Aspen was over $1 million. So affordable housing in Aspen is $1 million. It all depends on that 60% of income or 30% of income level.
Yeah, exactly. No.
All right, so the word that's not rolling off of everybody's tongue is obtainable housing. That's the new term, obtainable. You're talking about the AMI chart, and we do have an organization here in town that's doing a great job, and we can all promote it and we can all help them out. It's called Habitat for Humanity, and they are looking at building some more obtainable housing here in town. And so If you want to support them or donate, you can do that. But yes, it's out there. I believe now that the council is, or future council members are aware of the report. I hope you all read it because it's very interesting. It gives 5 different opportunities or ways to continue the discussion. And that's really what we can do as council members is continue the discussion, because eventually a developer is going to come in and they're going to get a tax break and they're going to want to develop. Thank you.
Val, and then
I'll
we'll,
just quickly mention that that report is on the city website.
I thought so too. Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn it over to our 2 press representatives, unless there are other press representatives in the audience. No, it's okay.
Okay, I'd like to start out with a question for everyone up here. I'm assuming you're all Christians and are very devout in your faith. So I'd like to start out with a question that is a hypothetical question. If Planned Parenthood wanted to open a clinic in Woodland Park and passed all planning and zoning hurdles and planning sent a recommendation to council for approval, would your faith influence your vote? And if so, would you recuse yourself from the issue? And that's for all of you.
You want to start with Mr. DeZellem, please?
Yeah.
And we'll go around if you choose to respond to that question.
Could you say that again just a little slower?
Okay. If
Más lento.
Planned Parenthood decided they wanted to come to Woodland Park and open a clinic, and their proposal passed all planning and zoning hurdles, and planning sent a recommendation to council for approval, would your faith influence your vote? And if so, would you recuse yourself from the issue if it did?
I probably would.
Would what?
Recuse.
Okay.
If they have made application and they have met all the criteria, meaning the law, the code, all of the hurdles, as you described them, good word, I would approve the application because it has met the letter of the law, and it's a personal property right to develop the personal property as long as it's in the guidelines of the law. Thank you.
I am a man of faith. I have seen the movie about Planned Parenthood called Unplanned, and I would not recuse myself, but I would treat them fairly.
Don?
I'm a man of faith. I am pro-life, period, in the subject. But it doesn't affect how I vote and act as a council member. As was said, if it's met all of the code, if they've met all the hurdles, I would vote to approve.
Thank you, Don. Jim?
2 parts to this question. First of all, it is a fundamental principle of this country that the free exercise of religion shall not be abridged by any government entity. We misinterpret the separation of church and state to demand of people of faith that they withdraw from the political arena. That is fundamentally against our federal constitution. So I would in no way recuse myself when my faith informs me, and I do trust in Jesus Christ as my Savior. Secondly, I don't need my faith only to inform me when it comes to the issue of the destruction of innocent human life in the womb. I stand for the protection of life from conception to natural death. That also is a principle of our Declaration of Independence. Now to the matter at hand. I can use my rationality, my reason to understand how destructive for our community it would be to have such a facility. My wife, many years ago, for 12 years, ran a maternity home where they took care of young ladies who were dealing with the problems of pregnancy. And I know the destruction
Bob,
from that experience that it causes.
Bob, we're going to come back.
to
Oh, I'm
ladies.
sorry, Jim. We'll come back to you with 30 seconds. Michael,
How long do we have?
you have a minute, 60 seconds.
Every decision I make is affected by my faith. It is simply rooted in me. So to ask me to set aside my faith to make a decision is crazy, because we all make decisions based on what we believe. But I do understand that this is a nonpartisan group of people. And when I stole that term from Noel, by the way, he didn't get to say it. When they come up here to apply, the one thing I can do is I can listen to you. And I don't have to make it. They can meet all the requirements. They can meet all the laws and the regulations. But if there is an overwhelming yelling of people in this community, we will try. If we're talking about this particular subject, right? This particular subject, it could be a strip club the next time you ask that question. What would we say about
Those are not permitted in the city limits.
Oh, sweet. So we don't even have to argue that one. Well, whatever. It could be a marijuana facility. It could be any facility that if they show up and meet the requirements, as nonpartisan as we are, but he called us all out. He's like, you're all Christians. We're all going to make it based on our faith fundamentally. And so that's a tough question. I hope we never cross that bridge.
Thank you,
Can I say
Michael.
that?
No.
Are we good?
Yeah.
So I'm Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I went to a Catholic school first, second, and third grade. Please don't hold that against me. I am pro-life. I don't think our town needs a facility like that. I would, as a mayor, I would be nonpartisan. Thank you. And I would have to make the decision. I would have to take my personal agenda out of it and make the right decision for the community on what the community wants. And I'm sure if that facility was even thinking about coming here, there would be an uproar in our community, and we would, as council, we would know exactly how the community feels, and we would take our, I'm sure the council has heard the community in the past and done the right thing. I definitely would, but I
Thank you, Noel.
personally against it, but I would take my personal agenda out of it.
Val.
Thank you. So we on council have to make tough decisions all the time. We have to go through and do things for the community. So the community is who we represent. We do not represent our own personal feelings. We represent 8,500 or 9,000 people right now. So we quite often have to come through and make decisions that are not tasteful for ourselves. I like why several of the answers here are exactly like mine. We need to understand that when we are doing things for the citizens will dictate what we do. But on the other hand, as Councilmember Case said, we have a list of things that we go through that are violations or not violations. Now, sometimes we have the latitude to disagree with the list of parameters that have been given to us, and we can make our own individual decisions. The community would speak on this one, I'm certain. I have my own personal feelings. I don't bring those to the table, but I'm like everybody to my right here. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Val. Rusty.
I'm a Christian, and I let my faith guide my behavior and my thoughts. But I do believe in the separation of church and state, and the fact that our oath is a representative of the people. With that said, I'm going to follow the law of the land and the municipal code. Now, my number one priority is looking at the municipal code. And what we have to do is get ahead of it, because just like the code prevents strip clubs. If the community wants to deny a Planned Parenthood from being built here, they need to get it into the municipal code now before a developer brings it forward to the planning commission, because once they bring it to the planning commission, the code and the law of the land has got to guide what they're allowed to do, because I too believe that property owners have their rights.
Thank you, Rusty. And I think Jim did have, did you want to respond?
Sure.
You have 30 seconds.
We need to follow the rule of the law. And that is a fundamentally important aspect of what we do. There is a disagreement in this country as to whether it is right to allow the unborn to be destroyed in the womb. 60 million babies or more in this country have been destroyed. I believe it fundamentally goes against our principles as a country, and I think it is within our levity as a city council on matters of this particular import to do something about it.
I totally agree with you, Jim. And I would challenge the idea of there being a separation of church and state. It's become a very popular concept, but it's actually not accurate in terms of our founding documents and the whole history of our nation. So the whole idea of our town doesn't allow strip clubs. Well, there was a time in our nation when it was not okay to say the name of God in vain, and you could get a $500 fine and prison time. So we're not there today, but I do think it's very fair to say that we need to uphold our Christian heritage if we are to move forward as a nation.
Michael had the next response. 30 seconds.
This is a great debate question. It's been going on for years and years and years. There are pastors in this room right now that would stand up. There are people in this room that would stand up. And I don't agree with everything Jim says, but I would have his back if we had to keep a Planned Parenthood out of Woodland Park. I would still, for the question itself, try to make that partisan decision, but I would go look for every legal loophole I could find to make sure it didn't happen.
Partisan. It's okay. Rusty, and then we'll come back to Jim.
Well, I just want to clarify one thing. Planned Parenthood is more than abortions. So if we limit abortions, yes, it is. Planned Parenthood does help people plan their parenting. That is an aspect. Now, it's been grossly, the principle of Planned Parenthood has changed where it's mainly abortions right now, but there is a secondary function of a Planned Parenthood clinic, and that is to help families and newborn.
Jim, one last response, and then we're going to go to the career.
Me? Oh,
Oops.
what?
Oh, please. I need to remind the audience that I am truly enjoying the responses of the panel, but let's keep our responses from the audience as limited as possible. Thank you. All right, Jim, we're going to finish with you, and then I'm going to go to Norma, who I know has got a great question.
One fundamental distinction I want to make. People should have the right to use their property as they see fit.
That's a good answer.
But this particular issue, where life is destroyed in the womb, at some point in this country, we need to make a stand. I would propose council legislation that would prohibit Planned Parenthood or any abortion facility from being in this city. So I'd like to take that on. But I want to make this distinction. I believe people should use their property as they wish. This is a particularly tricky subject.
Rusty, because you are sitting on the end, I'm going to give you the last response, and then we'll go to Norma.
Yeah, I don't share this information very much because I'm trying to separate how I vote as a councilman. My mother is a nun, or was a nun. I was raised Catholic at the strictest level, so being pro-life is 100% a part of me. So I don't want my council members to think that I am not pro-life, but I have to look at the job as a council member and following the law, and let my background, my faith, my upbringing guide me in my thoughts, but I have to represent the law.
Thank you so much. Norma, please.
So I know some of you have met with the school superintendent and talked to him about the issues facing local schools. You've talked about the 1.09 tax. You've talked about property tax. How would you support the local schools? Saying that we have to have good schools to have a good city. Well, how would you do that?
Which way do you want to start, Norma? Do you want each of the candidates to answer? I'm going to start with Rusty.
Okay, it's a great question, since I met with Dr. Stephen Wolf this morning, and my very question to him is, how can we as city council members help? And what was nice to know, I mean, we talked about the 1.09, but there are other things, he had other ideas that I'll share with you. And the first one that he brought up is how there are organizations that can share health insurance coverage. The schools have a $0.25 million increase in their health insurance next year. That there is an initiative right now where maybe the city government could get together with their health care and work with the school. And there are some other agencies down in Colorado Springs where you could share the health insurance that could save a lot of money for the school. So there are a lot of ideas coming from the superintendent. We simply need to sit down as city council member and work with him and find out some of those ideas.
Thank you. The superintendent I met even before he came on board over at the smokehouse, and we talked about all kinds of things. My wife's a tag teacher, so we had a great conversation. The city council itself, as we discussed a week ago, it really doesn't have an input to this. However, I'm big on volunteerism. Everybody knows I volunteer for all kinds of things. There's the WILD program that he supports. I support privately donations to the Panthers, to the various things. I think this is a private entity sort of volunteerism endeavor that the city council can root for and help to create the environment, but we don't have any direct aspect outside of the subject we already talked about. So I'm always cheering on all the people who do this wonderful jobs of volunteering to help the school and the children, because we need to get the children educated better than we have in the past, and it's no fault of the school district.
Thank you, Val. No. 1 minute, please.
1 minute. Okay, so I'm going to talk fast. Back in the 1990s, the school was about population of 1,200. 2020, it's around 750. So if you look at the Amendment 23 from the state, it's per pupil, how much they get. They still have a building that can support 1,200 students. So, but they get from the state, they get the amount for 750. So you can imagine how the school board struggles, or the school struggles to make things meet. And that's where the council and the community came together and passed the 1.09% sales tax to help out the school. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, council can affect the school. Council can say, hey, we don't want to give you your sales tax anymore. That's worst case scenario. I'll never be a part of that. But best case scenario is we continue it on. The state gets their stuff together, the school's fully funded, and then we can reduce that sales tax a little bit to maybe 0.5 in the future, maybe 5-10 years down the road.
Okay. Thank you,
That's how
Noel.
council can help.
Thank you, Noel. Michael?
I just want to mirror the answer of it's not really our job, but I could tell you this, that when they asked this at the school, it was not only do I want to allow them to continue to keep that tax right now, because it was something the city voted on, the people voted on, is I want to go take the tax dollars away from the DDA and I want to reroute that to the emergency services and the school. And it can be done. It can be done. They have a debt there at the DDA that we're going to have to take care of. So it may not happen tomorrow, but it can be done. So I think there's actually more money out there. If money fixed everything, that would be the answer. But the truth is, he gave the numbers, 1,200 students in 1990 and 780 here. That's a story problem. You got to change the image of the school. We have to change the image, and that I can help with. That personally I can help with. That personally I'll go to the school and work with those people on a volunteer basis to talk to them about that. They've already started. We've already seen their commercials running. They've already started. So helping them change that story, I think we can do. We can always find them more money, but I'm gonna go look at the DDA for that.
Thank you. Jim?
Why should we even talk about money? We can't do a dang thing in council for the school in that regard. But sometimes the premise of these questions are very interesting to me, because we're asking, what can we do for a school? And I look forward to meeting the superintendent and talking to him and hopefully being helpful. And I think we can all do volunteer work and anything we want. I mean, it's our community. We care for them. But no one asks what the school can do for us. I sat down with members of there was a committee put together prior to this whole sales tax proposal. And I heard that many excellent ideas at the time were offered at the time. Each school only had 2/3 of enrollment in them. Well, why not consolidate and get rid of a facility? I mean, we have school choice in this state in a way that is better than other states. Why not make better education at the school? I think that the school can help us as much as we need to try to help and support them.
Don?
Well, I'm glad to hear that Steve said the same things to Rusty as he did to me on Monday. So
They were very similar.
very good. The insurance pool issue, and I know the city staff is working with them to save some bucks, is a big issue. One of the things he said to me is there's a bill before the legislature in the state right now that would require us to put a ballot question on increasing property tax for schools at the local level. Steve and his CFO do not support that. I'm just going to tell you that. So if Governor Paulus signs that into, we'd be required to have it on the ballot, but the school district doesn't support it because they like the sales tax. School choice is, as Jim mentioned, they also mentioned students go down the hill to Manitou because they can. And yet they do a good job of advertising. Some of the commercials that we've put together are pretty good. And I really commend Steve and his staff for doing that. I'm done.
Thanks, Don.
I got the sign.
Okay.
Norma, if I heard you correctly with your question, you asked, what can we do with the kids? We want to grow the community of our children. What's that look like for a future? So for me, it goes back to our 10-year strategic plan. When we were up at the school at the forum last week, I talked with Andy, and the idea of collaborating with the college to have the civics kids come and do exchange. And I think that we need to look at what it's going to take to keep our kids in Woodland Park, to grow here, to grow our base of children in the community. When we did the Citizens Academy, we sat around. One of the exercises that we did was to take vacant land in the city and say, okay, what would you do with that land? And one of the discussions we had was to put a trade school on one of the pieces of land, have 50 or 100 students there. And that trains our high school students in the next level to be able to engage in practical application into community. So that's some of the answer that I would give you.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you. The idea of the shared healthcare pool, we've looked at that in the past, and we've included other agencies, for instance, the county and other governmental type agencies in looking at doing that in the past. And some of the experiences some of the agencies had in claim law and loss experiences hindered the other agency, and so it didn't work. I'm glad to hear that's being looked at again, because if the opportunity's there and we can make it work, it's just that somebody wasn't attracted to the other one, and so it wasn't any longer a possibility. But it's a great idea and could work, definitely. I have to say I agree with Michael. People know I've never been quiet about, I think that it's time that the TIF that is going to the DDA be redirected and the interruptions stop, and those tax dollars go back to the taxing entities. That would be all of them, including the ambulance, all of our emergency services, the city, the county, the school district as well. That would be helpful. And maybe even at some point in the future, we could all have a conversation, all those taxing authorities, about maybe giving some relief in property taxes with no levy. I see the stop sign. Thank you.
Don.
I would propose that the school district start looking at partnerships with outside organizations. The building sits empty at night. Why can't Pikes Peak Community College come up and run classes at night for the community? use that building so we don't have to build another building to run a trade school or an after evening college up here. Also, one of the things that they're doing currently is the city provides a PE credit for the kids to learn how to become lifeguards. So there's a partnership where we're enriching the kids, teaching them a skill, and it's not costing the school district a whole lot, and it's not costing the city a whole lot because we already have the facility there.
Thank you, Don. Bob or Norma, do you have a, we got some responses here.
Just a
Okay.
response.
These are 30 seconds. Jim?
First of all, TIF taxes are a scam. When the DDA is gone, the taxes go. That's what we need to do. And secondly, we need vocational education at that high school. I didn't get a chance to say that. And that's the best thing for kids. And we need to look at doing that. That will also be something that could attract. We have no control over in the council, though.
Michael?
I just want to agree with these guys on the vocational ed. And I could throw this out for a resume. I taught video editing for Resurrection Christian School for 5 years as part of just kind of a part-time thing. But I think there is opportunity at our school to make it more attractive for students to be here. And that goes with that vocational ed, that goes with the special programs. My son, I take to District 42 because they have an aerospace class where he'll be flying a plane by the time he's 14. And we could have that going on here. And so, just out there, just to agree with the vocational ed.
Thanks, Michael. Val?
Thank you. So one of the aspects I've been looking at the whole 4 years I've been on council is how do we get more students? Well, we get more families with young students. So I've been involved with the broadband initiatives around town and in the county. I sit on that committee. I've sat on it for 4 years now, or 3.5 anyway. And getting high-speed broadband, and as a private it's 3P solution. It's not. I'm not advocating on the utility in the city, but we've done great strides to get broadband up here, and some of the private providers will get those people in here with young families who work at home.
Dar, please, and then we'll finish. Noel, you're next. Okay.
I took this question at the high school the other day and led with the vocational training concept, but that's part of it that the school could do. As a city, what we could do is continue to attract primary jobs to the community. And that creates families in the community, which creates students, which creates state funding and of the schools.
Thank you. And Noel, please.
So the school board is comprised of some amazing volunteers, and I'm pretty sure they thought of all this stuff. This is no news to them. I could probably look over there and I see a nod. Yep. The things that the city can do to help the school is, well, we already work with the school with the Parks and Rec program. Everybody keeps forgetting that. We do use their facilities for a lot of our programs. We can increase those programs. The concern would be the kids. The kids are bored at night. There's not much to do here in town. So the council and the city staff can look at maybe adding things to our parks, climbing walls. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, but I think we're focused on that sales tax.
I think this was a great discussion. Again, Norma or Bob, do you have any other questions? One each, please.
I recently did a story on the Aquatic Center and spoke to Bob Carlson, who was very influential in getting the Aquatic Center built. And we discussed phase 2 of the Aquatic Center, which would include several more amenities, including a running track and the sauna and several other amenities that a lot of people would really enjoy. And one of the methods, or the primary method that Bob Carlson suggested that these improvements be funded, was to create an option that the 410 Street Fund be amended so that those funds are not only used for roads, but they could be also used for things like the Aquatic Center Phase 2 that the citizens may want. So basically, I'm just asking if you would agree with that. And I know he also mentioned, which is a fact, that if this were to take place, if a 410 fund was amended, it would have to go to a vote of the people. And I just would like to know if you would agree and support that possibility.
And you want each candidate to respond to that, or each one that wants to?
Each one.
Okay, I'm going to start with Don. You want to take a crack at that one?
I wouldn't support it right now. One, we have a facility that's still primarily is being underutilized. And we have roads that need to be taken care of. So I would leave the road fund alone right now and look at expanding the aquatic center in the future.
Thank you, Don. Kelly?
Thank you. I absolutely cannot entertain any expansion of the aquatic center until we solve the math right now and the deficit that we're incurring in the operations there. We're working on it. We've seen a slight improvement, but the general fund is subsidizing that to the tune of $340,000 in the 2020 fund and budget, and trying to figure out how to pay for it. And we're talking about debt reduction already of a significant amount of debt that was incurred to build that. And I hear conversations that it was affordable, and I disagree with that, and have since it was first discussed. So we're charged right now with that task of paying for what we have, and it's quite daunting at this point. And so to increase that at this point, no. And I agree with Don. The 410 fund was put in place by a vote of the people for the purpose of maintaining our infrastructure, our drainage, our roads, our curb and gutter, our sidewalks, and all of those things associated, not only construction, but maintenance and addressing future development needs. And there's plenty of use for that fund. So
Thank you, Kelly. Robert?
Yeah, Bob, I loved your idea when you came to City Hall the other day and proposed paying down the debt in 5 years. So I would certainly welcome your input on that project. And I think as far as developing the further phases of the aquatic center, I just don't know we're quite ready to even look at that as a feasibility.
Thank you. Dar?
I think it should be said, Bob did a pretty interesting job of presenting that, and I've had an opportunity to look at it in a little bit more detail. I would have to point out that part of phase two actually would increase the usage of the aquatic center. And historically across the country, aquatic centers that stand alone do incur a shortfall even greater than what we have today. Having said that, the 410 fund, I don't know about you guys, but I drove a little Volkswagen here and it almost got swallowed by some potholes. Now, we do a good job of that. We do a good job of repairing that, and it's not a good time of year to be doing a lot of that. I understand. Some of my advisors tell me I should take a picture of myself out there with a fishing pole on a pothole and put it all over my website. I'm not going to do that. So I think we have plenty of usage for the 410 fund as it is currently, but I would certainly entertain looking at that expansion at some future date.
Thank you, Dar. Jim?
Any proposal to take money from the 410 fund and move it into the aquatic center, if not ethically or morally in effect, would be a fraud. The people of this city demand good streets, and we're not performing it right now. We can do better. So that we can't take from that fund. The aquatic center itself was promoted by a previous city manager, and in my opinion, in a manner that was disingenuous to the voters of this city who thought they were getting one thing and ended up getting another. It has been far too expensive. It is an albatross across our necks right now. It was never going to be financially viable. If we mothballed it now, we would have extra money to put on top of the 410 fund and get our streets in order. I'm not necessarily proposing that. We've got previous commitments we've got to work through, but that's what the numbers are, $322,000 in the hole. So we're going to have to rethink our priorities here. And this is one of those areas where we're going to have to stay focused or we're going to have a problem.
Michael?
I think the aquatic center has some issues. I don't think taking money from our roads is ever going to solve those issues. I don't even know what the right number is because I heard so many different numbers during this thing. I've heard 340, I've heard 240, I've heard it's going to cost this much. But taking money from one designated area and trying to fix another problem in our area is not going to help. I have seen the plan that was laid out to second expand that thing, and it may bring in some profit this way. I am encouraged, though, to say that the city is doing some things that could actually start pushing money towards the aquatic center. They have taken on the Ute Pass Cultural Center, and I've been told by the city manager that thing could be in the black in a year. And that means money's coming in from that thing. And so if we could, and that's all part of the Parks and Rec, and that's all part of the same fund. So we could use some other entities to help relieve those debts and that payment that we have to make, whatever that payment is, 340, 240, 140, whatever it is. But to take from our roads it's a ridiculous plan. We need some good roads. And we could actually take from that road plan and start putting money away for a bypass plan 20 years from now. If we're going to steal from the roads, let's talk about building a road.
Thank you, Michael. No, I know this is an issue that you and Val certainly have looked at.
That's the last question.
The 410 fund is sacred. But let's talk a little bit reality and some numbers here. If we continue the current bond debt for the aquatic center, we're going to pay $4.4 million in interest. That's a big number, and that hurts. So in 2025, there's a call where we can either refinance it, we can pay down. If we refinance, finance numbers are low at the moment. Hopefully they stay that way. We could almost save $1 million, and our payment would go down. At that time, I would entertain phase 2 of the aquatic center. But at this time, we are not there. And I think since it's such a new debt, I think the community needs to be a little more patient in it and let it continue on and see where we end up, because we're bringing in more sales tax every year. So the payment's going to look smaller and smaller all year, every year. But I am an advocate of lowering the interest rate, because 4.4 million, I don't sleep well at night thinking about that. I would just honestly tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Val?
Thank you. So for 4 years, I've looked at this problem. We were sold 96,000 in the hole every year. It's now up to half of 660,000, 660 million, or 660,000 is the net deficit in 2020. We're working on plans with the administration of the Parks and Rec. That's the whole Parks and Rec negative. Now, we as a city decide that we want to go in the hole for Parks and Rec. It's an amenity that we have, but how much is the problem? And half of it now is the aquatic center. So the 410 fund spreadsheets and proposals we've had in front of us are very, very interesting. They're a tremendous amount of work by a private citizen. I think down the road we can look at that, but right now we have a huge debt problem. And until we get that debt in order, we have no business messing with anything, but we can be efficient in our government and go after that debt much quicker.
Thank you, Val. Rusty?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it in kind of a two-part. The debt, because of our debt status, I would not be favorably considering phase 2 at this point in time. In the future, we could look at the phase 2 to the aquatic center and plan for it. And the way to plan for it is how I'm going to answer the second part, which is, would I ever consider taking the 410 and just modifying it? Because it kind of opens the door to fraud. And I think Jim is right. If a 410 is for one purpose, you don't start changing it for another purpose. You can create another line. Once that line, then you can start putting money aside for phase 2. But it's a Pandora's box, whether it's real fraud or perceived as fraud. And right now I'm learning there's a lot of people that criticize city council for a lot of underhanded things. I think this initiative of changing the 410 to be used for the aquatic would just be paving the way for a lot of accusations.
I think I've got the message. Don't mess with the 410. No, one more, please, one more response, and then we'll go to Norma.
So what I think is missing in this conversation is the positive that the aquatic center brings to our community. Real estate agents love it because when they say, oh, we got a nice aquatic center, people move up here just for that. So we're so focused on the debt, which is manageable. Yes, it's high.
Yeah.
And like I've said in the past, that it is, other communities have actually more debt than we do of the same size, bringing in the same amount of revenue. But we have to look at the positive also. The aquatic center is not going away anytime soon. No, there's no buyers out there right now if we were going to put it up for sale. And I don't think the school wants it.
Okay, it was a 30-second response. Jim, as promised, I'm going to go to Norma, and we'll see what Norma has, and then we'll go to our closing comments, and then we will conclude our forum.
As part of my job, I've been sitting through a lot of planning commission meetings talking about single-family projects in multifamily zones. How do you feel about that? How can the city handle this problem? Do you think single family homes should not be allowed at all, or should it be used as a way to make a little bit more dense housing so that can be more affordable?
Do you want that to go to all candidates? And I'm going to start with Rusty. And those are 1-minute responses if you want to take 60 seconds.
Well, the single family is why I'm up here. The municipal code has an inconsistency. I would delete in the permitted use the word single family. In the multifamily where it says it's permitted, I would just not make it. There's a Occam's razor is a term you hear in engineering. The simplest solution tends to be the best solution given all else being equal. The simple thing is in multifamily, just change it so that single families are not allowed. So only multifamilies are. If you want to put single families someplace, you change the zone to single family. It's a very simple solution instead of trying to come up with a list of conditions that are so complex that you think you can outsmart the creative mind of an entrepreneur, that will find a way to work around it if you just try to build a list of conditions. So I would simply make single families not allowed in multifamily.
Thank you, Rusty. Val?
I'm not 100% clear, but I'll answer what I think you're asking. The developer has, if they've gone through their code and their laws and everything, the zoning, that's what I'm talking about. They have a right to build whatever they want. On the other hand, green space is not 2 feet next to your garage, which is some of the calculations that go on. And it's very disturbing to me. We bought in this town because there was a lot of open space and green space, and a single family home meant on a certain amount of space. Multifamily implies apartments, condos, things like that. I would welcome those kind of developments for the places where they're zoned, but I would welcome the community to input in the comprehensive plan, which drives the zoning in the planning commission. These things don't hardly ever get to us up in city council, frankly.
That's a good point. No.
So on council, we've learned that density saves the community or saves the city money. In the long run, we're not a community of density. We do have a few apartment complexes, but all in all, most of our houses have land around them. We like it that way. I'd like to keep it that way. The question goes to coming back to a large plot of land that you can put a bunch of small homes on. If you're following what's going on, the council is addressing that, planning is addressing that. I'd like to continue to keep our community less dense. But that weighs the question of obtainable housing. And we are going to have some apartment complexes because those are needed in this town. So it's tough. I want to keep our community open. And I like the open space. I like to go hiking around our community. But we do need the obtainable housing, and that's generally what you see when you get density.
Thanks. Michael?
I don't know if that question is derived from a certain development or not, but I don't want to get blindsided by 25-year-old deals that were made when there were dirt roads. And when developers come in and try to utilize deals that were made 25 years ago to try to push different things through for their own development, and they're not looking at the betterment of Woodland Park, it's hard. As far as single family, multifamily on zoning, you know what? I'm gonna have to sit down and talk and learn and understand that a little bit better. Because it isn't clear, like Rusty said, the zoning isn't clear and kind of contradicts itself. And if there's logical thinking through that, I think that's definitely something part of the comprehensive plan. But as far as, garages 2 feet from your living structure and different things like that, man, a lot of that's being done in some trickery that was done 25 years ago. And so, I don't want to be blindsided by that.
Okay.
There you go. Done.
Jim?
I didn't agree with both Rusty and Val on this point. Excuse me. And I just want to add on a previous matter. I don't know how we can entertain the fantasy that we're going to refinance debt on this aquatic center in 2025 to try to expand it into something more if it is not by that time already a viable prospect for private purchase. Once and if it becomes something that makes a profit, then we can immediately find a buyer that will undertake it to finish off the debt that remains. We've got to really rethink what we're doing in this town. I mean, this town is about the people that live here. We want to do the things when it comes to single or multifamily homes that are going to attract the people to come live and work and shop in our community that we can find. And we don't want to turn away the people that want to make this the bedroom community that it mostly is right now. That's fine too. We love that. But we've got to change our focus to making this an attractive place to live.
Okay.
And do business.
I saw how you brought that back to that. Thank you. Dar?
This is really a land use question, if I understand the question correctly. Single family versus multifamily zoned areas. Rusty stated it very well as far as I'm concerned. If we don't like the way it is, we ought to change the one word and make it the other. So I don't have any issue with that, but it is a comprehensive plan issue. We had a meeting earlier today, as a matter of fact, on selecting the consultant for the comprehensive plan issue. And what many may not be clear on is that also will involve reviewing the code, our land use code and our municipal codes for that. And so it is an item that's on the agenda, and it will be addressed along with the comprehensive plan. I'm also reminded that the word park is in our name and it's in our DNA. So I'm for open spaces as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dar. Robert?
I have not reviewed the whole matter. I wasn't involved in what's going on with the tiny home community and how this has been stirred up as an issue. So I would like to just address the fact that it's important that we have a standard of our codes that apply to all, and that we don't have to be constantly second guessing whether our code meets compliance or not. We review our codes and look at the standards. But I'd like to go back to the whole idea of what do we see for Woodland Park? If we want to keep our community small and we want to make our taxation rate fair, we need to look at how we can bring in tourism and our business to stimulate to reason to come to Woodland Park. Enjoy your time here and go home. That's an important part of us staying a small community. And planning in that regard, to me, is a really important way to look at how we increase our tax dollars and we decrease the burden on our citizens.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you. As far as the question about single-family and multifamily zone, I agree with what Rusty said. I think being clear and concise without the guesswork would be helpful, certainly, for everyone, including the developer, because it's, it boils right back down to what I'm very passionate about, and that's personal property rights. I know that each and every one of us don't want anyone telling us what we're going to do with our property. And that's a fundamental part of our Constitution, of our founding fathers, is that ability to have personal property rights. So I welcome the entire community to really engage through the comprehensive planning process, because that will entail a complete review of our zoning regulations as well. And we have received that grant to do that. And that's really an opportunity for all of you to get involved and have your input into that process, because that's where we look for guidance in making our decisions and our choices. So that's how I'll answer that question, and invite all of you to invite everyone you know to come. Thank you.
Kelly. Don?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I mean, Rusty said it very concisely. Things need to be cut and dry and clear. No second guessing. And I too believe in the property rights of the landowner. If you have a legal right to use your land and it's permitted and coded, you have every use of that land that you're entitled to. So we just need to get, like Kelly said, everybody out to the meetings, and let's see what we come up with as a comprehensive plan for our town.
Thank you, Don. I'm going to go ahead and go to our 2-minute closings at this time, and then we will conclude the forum. And I'm going to start with Rusty, and we'll go around. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
And I didn't actually prepare any closing statements. I figured I would just kind of play it off of how the forum went. My intent was that the voters would see how I approach problems and make decisions. And it's kind of based on a couple things. I've tried to lay out a little bit of the foundation of the person of who I am. I've mentioned, my mother was a nun and I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian. That's the faith side of it. But I want to point out, I went to West Point. So duty, honor, country, a cadet would not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those that do. It's a part of me. So when you look at me as a candidate, that's the foundation of the person you get. Then you look at the manner in which you approach, how do you get 4 people to agree? And that's your demeanor. And I would hope that those that have seen my Nextdoor posts, or those that have seen how I did the presentation at the Board of Adjustment, what I hope you saw is a person that is going to speak to people in the manner in which I would want them to speak to me. So treat others as you would want others to treat you. So my demeanor, I hope it's very pleasant, it's open, it's professional. I don't want to attack any individual. I want to work with every single person. I've worked with the city staff, and all I want to say is positive things about every single person I've encountered in the city staff. They're wonderful. And I hope to bring that demeanor to whoever sits up here so that we can talk nicely to each other and have professional disagreements. We can agree to disagree, but it's all nicely done. And that's the demeanor that I would like to bring and demonstrate. And then the last thing is I would like to be more proactive. I see the city council in a very reactive mode, so I would like to be more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you to the chamber and my fellow candidates and all the participating citizens in the press. To review, I will continue my council service to serve as mayor by continuing my strong track record of consensus building and solution results. I will continue to be the most prepared on council, which is the mayor's duty. I will return control of the citizens' issues to the city council's agenda, organize and run city council meetings by the council's charter, in the practice of rubber stamping city staff demands through strong council leadership. Lead the council to principled decisions, not priorities of camaraderie. Represent citizens only, not the good old boys network. Convince budgeting based on zero-based budgeting instead of annual wish list budgeting. Retain green space and open space and view corridors. Encourage low-density, high-quality housing. Maintain our historic Western town nature. Strive for initiatives that support seniors' independence, because we have a lot of them here. And I'm the only candidate who will be your full-time mayor. I'm a problem solver, not a politician. I'm asking for your vote for Val Carr for mayor of Woodland Park. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sawyer.
These chairs are different than those over there. I've only sat over there, so it's.
You
kinda
just
interesting.
cut in 10 seconds in your.
Oh, great. What's your idea of a mayor? I laugh when watching old Western movies where the mayor walks around the town with a big top hat and tells everybody what to do. Can you imagine Neil Levy walking around with a big top hat right now? I can't. Well, those days have passed. What does the community want? They want a mayor that is trustworthy, a reliable person, someone that has integrity, honesty, and experience. As mayor, I want to make sure the community stays the community the people want. I have been on council for 6 years and consider my council time very successful. So what have I done on council? There's a lot of things that people don't know about what we do behind the scenes, and I'd just like to cover a few of them. I championed in-house servers. That's going to save $100,000 a year. I required an IT department. I pushed that for 4 years. We finally have an IT. That saved another $100,000. I fought for police salaries. I thought they were too low. We were losing too many police officers. I fought to raise that. It's happened. Our police officers are paid well. I also focused on the best talent. 17% reserve goes to all the council members at the time when we pushed that. It started at 3 when I was on council after the aquatic center. Now it's at 17. Hiring in-house city attorney, we save another $100,000 a year. We're saving a lot of money. The community doesn't realize this, but the council has been doing a good job behind the scenes. Memorial Park is an award-winning park. We upgraded the waste treatment plant. We have a beautiful aquatic center. Yes, it has debt, but it still brings people to our community. So as mayor, I want to continue all this. I want to continue keeping our community the way it is. I want to continue to work behind the scenes to make sure that the community isn't concerned about what city's doing, but concerned about what they want to do. They want to walk our parks. They want to do. So I want to continue that. My name's Noel Sawyer. I'm running for mayor, and I would like your vote. Thank you.
Michael Dalton, please.
I've taken great pride in knowing a lot of people in town, everybody from the homeless man to the mayor's wife, and my prayers are with the Levies right now. The other day I gave a bump to Ryan when I was driving by him. I think everybody needs a voice in this town, and if I'm elected council, I'll listen to the city. I'll listen to the city, the citizens. I will work with the people that I am voted to work with. That doesn't mean I have to agree. Some have called me a disruptor. I'm okay with that. Sometimes council needs a disruption. It doesn't need just a rubber stamp yes. I have worked with a number of businesses through this town, very successful businesses. I watched Cafe Leo birth and sell, and was a part of helping promote that business for the years and will continue. I've worked with Fusion Japan, and those ladies are opening another restaurant. So for someone to say you can't do business in this town, you just have to know what you're doing. I've worked with all kinds of organizations from Shop with the Cop, the rodeo, the parades to help promote this story, this thing that is Woodland Park. And so I've done a lot for businesses. I continue to think that if I am voted on council, I will continue to be able to do a lot with businesses, if not in a volunteer position here on council, but just in a communicative way. They know they can come to me and communicate with needs. I think that's the one thing we had questions about, is if we got all our business owners together and had a meeting and said, why is it hard to do business here? We might actually find something out that more than just us discussing things. And so I think an open communication with our business owners, what can we do to make Woodland Park a better place to do business? My time is running out. Vision. This town needs vision. We can talk about all the tax breaks, but just like the scripture says, if you have no vision, you will die. And so we have to have a vision for this town, and that's coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Michael. And
Thank you.
Thank you for the shout out for Mayor Levy and his family. Thank you very much. Jim, please.
Excuse me, I want to thank the Woodland Park Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, for the citizens that came to participate, for my fellow candidates, and for those listening remotely as well, too, who wanted to participate and care about this town. I believe as a city councilman that you need experience, you need a dedication to principle, and you need a focus on the citizens and not the government. The government serves the citizens and not the other way around, and provides them their opportunity to grow. Business development is a key issue for future city councils. We've got to focus on allowing our businesses to grow and to thrive. We need citizen input to help the council, the council and the administration understand what their expectations are and where they would like to go, what their vision is, not what vision we give them. The DDA's got to go, and the TIF tax with it. We need to get that land developed. We don't need to do any more special favors. It's just got to go away. But we've got a great board on it right now that is attempting to do that, and I'm appreciative of what they've done. We need an event focus. This needs to become a destination town. We need to encourage that and help that to thrive and grow. As for me using my personal faith, you'll notice that in most of my answers, except when asked, I don't make my personal faith the focus. It is fundamental to who I am. But I'm going to argue with you what I think based upon what's rational, reasonable, and principled. I believe in the principle of liberty, and I believe we need leadership on this council. Leadership is knowing what to do next, knowing why that's important, and knowing how to bring appropriate resources to bear on the problem at hand. That's been my life story. It's what I've done. My name's Jim Paff, and I ask for your vote for City Council.
Thank you, Jim. Dar.
I'd like to draw everyone's attention to that poster on the wall. It's the core values of the city. It's not my words, but a friend wrote me an email and said, are they talking about you, Dar, or are they talking about the city? Because that's me. That's what I bring to this table. And that's what I bring as the mayor of this town. All right, another conehead phrase. Ad majorem Dei gloriam. Can't help it, sorry. All of my education was parochial Catholic. And that is the Jesuit motto. I live by that. Another friend said, when he recommended that I go ahead and run for mayor, he said, Dar, you got to think of the greater good. What is your highest and best use? And I kind of blew it off. We were having a beer together after all. But later that night, I thought about it, and I thought, he's right. That is, I do need to think of the greater good, and I'm going to do that. As your mayor, I will think of the greater good. And you can count on me to always do that for you, for Woodland Park. Dar Nacarado, I'm running for mayor. I appreciate your support and vote.
Thank you. Robert.
Well, in closing, I want to thank Ms. Harvey. Is that an acceptable way to address you, ma'am?
Like I said.
I've been called worse.
And also the chamber for facilitating this event. I'm a third-year student in practical government, and this is an ideal opportunity to take the principles that I have been studying for more than just the last year in our Constitution, in our principles of freedom, of what makes us so excellent as a nation. I see we're in a turning point in our country. We see the divisiveness, and I ask myself, where can I be of most help? Where can I be of most service? And that begins at home. It begins in our community. And from there, if we're strong, it holds us together. If we share common values, common bonds, it holds us together against, I think, a strong wind which is heading our way. So in recapping, considering me as a councilman here and as a representative of your vote, my role is to give direction to the city manager, to administer your collective wishes for our city, but that is within the constraints of the founding documents of our country, our state constitution, and our city charter. This upcoming council will set the sail for the next 10-year vision for our city. We can either be under the yoke of debt at the end of that time, or we can take corrective measures to put the debt behind us. We can squeeze every tax dollar and fee from our businesses and residents, or draw tourist activities and dollars into our community and preserve our small community atmosphere. And finally, we can develop continuity from council to council and plan for needed traffic solutions, or look back 10 years from now and lament why we haven't solved our summer traffic parade. Together, I believe we face an exciting juncture in our city's history. We need to ask not what my city can do for me, rather what I can do for Woodland Park.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. I ask for your vote for city council.
Thanks to the chamber, thanks to Carol, thanks to the candidates and the community that's here and at home for joining us this evening. I am a fourth-generation Coloradoan. I've been involved in this community and serving the city of Woodland Park for 22 years, and I want to continue to serve as your mayor. I have a lot of institutional knowledge, which I really try to share and help our council members make informed decisions with all my years on staff. I previously mentioned that decisions are made within a framework of doing what is right and basing that on principles, my principles, just for me, not all of you. But I think responsible fiscal management has been a theme here this evening with all of us, which I'm happy to hear, and also the debt reduction and working on that. I'm committed to continuing to work on this goal along with whomever on this dais is elected. And I'd ask you all to join the county treasurer, Mark Zalusta, and the county sheriff, Mike, in endorsing me as your next mayor. So thank you for your time this evening, and thanks a lot, Carol, for coming.
I missed it. Thank you, Kelly. Don.
Well, I want to start off by thanking the chamber and you for hosting this event, and the press and the citizens for coming. I believe that an informed citizen is the best citizen. And the more that we can inform our citizens on what their role is in government, the better their government will be. So I propose to incorporate the citizens into the government as much as we can by providing them the opportunity to express their viewpoints at city council meetings, to the city council, at coffees and that type of thing. I also would like to find a way to promote Woodland Park as a shopping, recreational, cultural, and event destination that will aid increasing sales and lodging taxes and revenues. Being a small town has an inability to compete with larger towns for wages and such for our police officers and such. So we need to find a way to retain those people, either be by raising wages or by providing other such compensation to them. Infrastructure is a definite must. We need to make sure that we maintain it and keep it and make it growable for the future. And of course, the budget. So thank you for your time. And
Don, thank you very much, and I'm glad you were able to join us. It was important. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the 2020 City of Woodland Park Candidates Forum, hosted by the Greater Woodland Park Chamber of Commerce. And I want to thank all of the candidates for coming out tonight and answering the questions. I think it was very informative and very useful. Good night and have a safe trip.
Thank